Chapter 680. Boom. The little fire dragon Leo's body twisted and spun in the air, instantly releasing a scorching sun stab, which came from the high-level battle energy secret manual Red Sun Rising Flames. When List and Leo entered the Dragon Knight mode, he quickly discovered that Magic Eye, Aura Decay, and Red Sun Rising Flames could all be used on Leo, or to be precise, using the battle energy in his body, but according to the special state of the Dragon Knight resonance, Leo was able to use them. It was a relatively close definition. It could probably be compared to a CPU and a graphics card. List was a quad-core or even octa-core CPU of a computer, with powerful processor performance. However, the graphics card was an integrated graphics card, so no matter how exquisite the battle energy was, it could only play an ordinary effect. Because the graphics card could not be used, it was easy to smoke. Leo, on the other hand, had an independent 2080Ti graphics card. Perhaps its CPU was rough, but its graphics performance was top-notch. When List's octa-core CPU was matched with Leo's 2080Ti graphics card, it could drive the top 3A masterpieces. Dragon Knight was such a match made in heaven. Boom. A large pit with a diameter of more than 10 meters was blasted on the ground. List controlled Leo to land around the pit, and a few wisps of smoke rose from the ashes at the edge of the pit, creating a mysterious boss aura for him and Leo. Now that I know the power of the Dragon Knight before I entered the Dragon Knight mode, I'm afraid I would have been hung up and beaten by the Dragon Knight mode. Fortunately, I didn't encounter a real Dragon Knight before, otherwise I'm afraid I would have been slain within 3 to 5 moves, and the dragon slaying battle would have been a joke. Despite the lingering fear in his heart, he quickly felt relieved. With the guidance of the smoke mission, he had already entered the Dragon Knight mode before the dragon slaying battle. After a few more run-ins, he believed that he would become stronger and stronger, and the capital to deal with the dragon-slaying battle would be stronger. Most importantly, now that the mission was successfully completed, Achi was also about to advance to Magic Shooter. With the combined power of a Dragon Knight and a Magic Shooter, they could go anywhere in the world. I just don't know if the Dragon Knight has an exclusive Dragon Chi secret book. The Sapphire family has the Dragon Knight Chi secret book left behind by the first Grand Duke. I don't know if it is a Chi secret book specially for riding a dragon. Alas, I boast of myself as a genius and have a vision far beyond that of the Aborigines, but I have yet to create a Chi secret book. Back then, when he was bragging to William Levis and the others, he was very disdainful, saying that the combat energy manuals of the predecessors might not necessarily be suitable for him, and that he could create new combat energy manuals at any time. In the end, after several interruptions, he succeeded in riding a dragon, but he still didn't create any battle aura manuals. Actually, you can't blame me for bragging. I really don't have the time to study battle aura manuals. Who would have thought that after becoming a Sky Knight half a year ago, I would directly succeed in riding a dragon without any buffer at all? He comforted himself. He swore to himself that he would create a real dragon fighting technique based on his and Leo's actual situation. If there was enough time, he would also supplement the battle aura manuals of the Earth Knight and Sky Knight stages. On one hand, it was to leave a souvenir, and on the other hand, it could enrich the future generations. In addition, I must obtain a Battle Aura Domain secret book, and I must also accumulate a lot of Battle Aura secret skills. Although Magic Eye and Aura Attenuation are good, they are all auxiliary, and there are no Battle Aura secret skills. Before he could ride a dragon and was known as a Ghost Blade, the Battle Aura secret skills already didn't play too much of a role. They were more of an aid for the Sky Knight to compete with each other. But it was always good to have more Battle Aura secret skills, which could further enrich the family's heritage. In any case, if he really wanted to establish a country overseas, List didn't want his country to quickly decline after a few generations. At the very least, it should last for thousands of years so that the bloodline could spread to all parts of the world. After tossing and turning for a long time, the sky was already dark. Both man and dragon were so tired that their stomachs were growling. They squatted in the wilderness, one happily nibbling on a large steak, the other drinking a bit of milk to quench his thirst. When Leo was full, he rewarded him with a few potions as dessert. List waved his hand and had Leo turn into a ball of flame, which rushed into his body. Let's go back. I have to talk to Achi in detail after exploring a lot of new experiences. Perhaps these contents, especially the concept of magic particle movement, will inspire her to promote to an arch-wizard. He whistled. In the distance, the chocobo Loki, who was leisurely grazing, eagerly ran over, carrying him like a gust of wind towards the flower town. Unfortunately, no matter how hard Loki tried, List found it boring. After riding a dragon, riding another mount was a far cry from the riding experience. But in any case, after arriving at the seaside villa, he still grabbed a handful of secret wheat grains as a reward. So it was. After eating a sumptuous dinner in the castle, Liszt went straight to the seaside villa. The villa's room was bright. In order to protect Achi's eyes from reading, studying, and experimenting at night, he installed several crystal lamps in the room. In any case, he was now rich and had no shortage of money. Achi, I'm back. Liszt was about to open the door and quickly communicate with Achi. But the next moment the door opened by itself, or rather was opened by Achi. The little siren stood in front of the door, smiling sweetly. Big brother. Achi, you. Liszt was a little stunned. In the past, because Achi could not move freely in the room, he had to open the door himself. He did not expect that this time, it would be Achi opening the door for him. Most importantly, Achi was standing on the floor in front of him. Liszt's eyes couldn't help but wander down along Achi's eyes, past several mysterious areas covered by the water ribbon, past her smooth thighs and calves, and directly fixed on a pair of white and flawless feet, pink and tender, which made people want to play with them unconsciously. Achi seemed to be a little uncomfortable under Liszt's hot gaze. She could not help but shrink her feet and said, Big brother, Achi has advanced to magic shooter. Magic shooter? You have advanced to magic shooter. Liszt was shocked. In an instant he forgot about Achi's feet. He directly picked up Achi by the waist and spun her around twice. My little siren is amazing. You are the only magic shooter in this sea area and even in the 2 kingdoms that I know of. There were no records of magic shooters in the Eagle Kingdom and the Steel Ridge Kingdom. As for whether there were any in private, at least Liszt knew that Achi was the only magic shooter. In a time when the magic network had been shrinking since the era of the Moon Empire, it was not easy to produce a new magic shooter. Chapter 681. Whether Achi was considered an adult or not was not easy to say. However, since Achi was promoted to a magic shooter, her body had been elemental remodeling with the help of the magic net. While retaining the independence of her body and mind, she was integrated into the magic net and became a part of it. The magic net is a very strange existence. Achi can't perceive where it ends, but it covers every corner of the world. It can open a hole anywhere and then release magic with the help of the magic net. Even on land it can release powerful water magic. Achi described the magic net in detail. Although she said that the Dragon Knight was like a smaller version of the magic net, the Dragon Knight's magic net and the real magic net were worlds apart. Of course, even if Achi tried to describe the image of the magic net, Liszt's understanding of the magic net was still very vague. After all, the magic net was a very abstract existence, and it was difficult to really understand its existence without touching it personally. It was more like a rule existence than a real object. So the magic you absorbed already belongs to the magic of the magic net. Do you think it can reach the level of dragon will? Liszt asked. Although he was tempted by Achi's pair of white feet when he first saw her, he couldn't help but feel restless. But the desire for knowledge and the respect for power made him quickly put aside the distractions in his mind and enthusiastically discuss the magic net with Achi, chasing the truth together. It may be different from the dragon will that you described, brother, but Achi has to analyze Bilio's dragon will and the magic of the magic net. That's not difficult. Bilio can have as much dragon will as he wants. With Liszt's current relationship with Bilio, Bilio would not refuse if he wanted some dragon will. But you know that I have the magic eye. Now release the magic of the magic net and let me check it. What is so magical about it? Achi nodded. Then he cast the basic water magic water arrow. A water arrow condensed in his hand. He didn't shoot it but just floated quietly. His pupils were like a starry vortex. Liszt had already cast the magic eye and carefully observed the water arrow. There was blue and white water attribute magic that continuously maintained its existence. This type of magic was extremely condensed, but unfortunately, Liszt didn't enter Dragon Rider mode, so he couldn't observe the movement of the magic particles. However, he could sense that the mana of the weave was different from ordinary mana. It dissipated much slower and was much more condensed. Achi, my initial feeling is that the weave's mana isn't at the limit of draconic will. It's more like the ordinary mana released by a dragon. Or to put it more accurately, it should be at the level of my draconic fighting chi. I didn't expect the mana of the weave to be so powerful. Combat aura was a special kind of magic extracted from the human body. Beginner do chi, intermediate do chi, advanced do chi, this was a complete advancement form. Basically, advanced do chi was the final form of do chi. As for the dragon aura, strictly speaking, it no longer belonged to the category of aura. It was continuously fused and purified with the help of the dragon's magic power, reaching a higher level of magic power. Just as you said, the Dragon Knight is a smaller version of the weave. List's imagination gradually went wild. Does this mean that the draconic fighting chi released by the Dragon Knight is actually very similar to the mana of the weave? So the draconic fighting chi and the weave's mana are of the same level? Using levels might not be accurate. It would be clearer to use energy levels to express it. Big Brother's words make a lot of sense. Chi nodded in agreement. She rather worshipped List because List had imparted too much mystical knowledge to her, such as the movement of celestial bodies, the Big Bang gravitational waves, wormholes, the 3 laws of thermodynamics as well as the structure of cells, the 4 major tissues of the human body and so on. In her heart, List's knowledge was far more profound than that of any other mage. This was indeed the case. The knowledge that List brought was the summary and exploration of Earth's scientists over 1,000 years. The humans of this world were still immersed in Do Chi and magic, unable to extricate themselves from it. All day long they were either training or fighting. Farming depended on the elves, and mining depended on the dragons. They did not have the motivation to develop technology. The triangular theory of matter, magic, and spirit was too broad, causing humans to not focus on material technology, but to walk the path of magic expansion. But it was normal when one thought about it. As long as one trained, they could become stronger and plunder everything. Who would be willing to painstakingly invent and create? Even as a transmigrator, List had enjoyed the light of civilization in modern society, but he was still attracted by magic and could not extricate himself from becoming stronger. He had no interest in promoting the development of the Industrial Revolution. If one could have everything by picking up elves and riding a dragon, why not choose such a shortcut? Why not promote the Industrial Revolution? Instead of spending hundreds of years constantly promoting industrial development and barely creating weapons of mass destruction like the atomic bomb that could grow mushrooms, it was better to ride a few more dragons. All in all, List could indeed be called a polymath in this world. He and Chi carefully compared the magic of the dragons and the weave, and came to the conclusion that the 2 types of magic were essentially at the same level, belonging to the same energy level. The will of the dragon is the ultimate type of magic. The ordinary magic of the dragons and the magic of the weave are high-level magic, and the other stray magic is low-level magic. The discussion lasted until late into the night. Chi concluded, the other forms of magic such as combat aura, blood magic, druid magic, and the magic inherited by ancient warriors and ancient wizards should all be branches of low-level magic. They are still low-level magic in essence, while dragon combat aura is a branch of high-level magic. List quickly recorded in his thick bast paper notebook, the knight's combat aura is a training system based on low-level magic. After becoming a dragon knight, the combat aura turns into high-level magic. It is the same for mages. All kinds of magic are evolved from low-level magic, and only archmages turn into high-level magic. Based on what was known so far, only dragon knights and archmages were involved in high-level magic power. The other ancient warriors and ancient mages were still working on low-level magic power. That was why during the era of the Moon Empire, when the weave was strong, mages ruled the world. At the current stage, the weave had shrunk, and the dragon knight who owned the weave emitted light and heat. Thus the knight began to rule the world. Compared to the worship of knowledge of mages, the knight's training was more barbaric, causing the prosperous civilization of the Moon Empire to be lost after a few thousand years. We should divide them into levels and define the nature of each level of magic. This will make it easier to publish books in the future. List finally said, low-level magic is called low-energy magic, high-level magic is called high-energy magic, and the ultimate magic, which is the will of the dragon, is called super-energy magic. In short, they were low magic, high magic, and supreme magic. Earth Knight, Sky Knight, Domain Knight, Mage, Archmage, Bearskin, and Vampire were all low magic professions. Dragon Knight and Archmage were high magic professions. Chapter 682. In the final analysis, the difference between low magic, high magic, and supreme magic lay in the difference in the speed of motion of the magic particles, but it was difficult to clearly understand the nature of such a microscopic level. List only told Chi the concept of particle motion and no longer delved into it. Chi, who had been promoted to magic shooter, had proved that her talent could beat most humans in seconds, and her IQ should be able to win a Nobel Prize on Earth. Therefore, handing over the more difficult problems to Chi could better liberate List for his training as a dragon knight. But before he left, he had another thing to do, measure Chi's 3 measurements and other data, and then make a batch of clothes for her. Pajamas, home clothes, magic cloaks, and aristocratic dresses must all be there. If one day List founded a country, Achi would be the country's eldest princess. Although he could basically determine Achi's physical data at a glance, List still took out a tape measure himself and carefully measured Achi to get the most accurate number. After recording the number on the thick bast paper, List smiled and touched Achi's hair. After the clothes are made, you can live in my castle. You can go anywhere you want in my territory, but try not to reveal your siren identity so as not to attract the malice of others. I know, brother. Achi nodded reservedly. She had been yearning for life on land for a long time. When the time comes, if you like, I can arrange for you to go to the Mage Tower where you know Chris and other great mages. You can arrange for them to work on some simple topics and let them help you share the research tasks. Of course, don't reveal your identity as a magic shooter for the time being. Whether it was him or Achi, they had just advanced to a high magic profession. They needed time to become stronger, so it was better to keep a low profile for the time being. Finally, after kissing Achi's forehead, List got up and left the seaside villa. After returning to the castle, he handed Achi's figure data to the castle's housekeeper, Mrs. Morrison, and asked her to arrange for someone to sew clothes immediately. First, make a set of magic cloaks and undershirts, which must be worn tomorrow morning. At the same time, make a set of aristocratic dress, which must be completed within 4 days. The other clothes can wait. Even the most professional tailor could not sew a set of clothes immediately. The better the clothes, the more time was needed, especially the aristocratic dress. Master, how should I choose the fabric of the clothes? The best fabric, the same size as my clothes. The next morning, the tailor arranged by Mrs. Morrison had already made a magic cloak and undershirt overnight. List gave them to Achi after he finished his morning exercises. Achi, put on this suit, I will take you to Flower Town and Black Horse Island. Yes. List left the room and closed the door. He didn't think about peeking at the scenery while Achi was changing her clothes. In fact, he didn't even think about it. He was just chatting awkwardly with the giant kelp sprite Parker in the worm room of the pond. Achi actually grew legs and became as handsome as you and me. Really? Of course there is still a gap. Hee hee. I don't like her hair. Tawny is the prettiest color, like handsome Parker. I suggest you also change into a tawny suit. It looks pleasing to the eye, otherwise it will be difficult for your handsomeness to keep up with Parker's footsteps. List smiled. I also think tawny is better, but I am a nobleman. Frack Abier is the most suitable dress for my identity. Chatting with Parker was basically meaningless narcissistic words. There was something wrong with this great elf's brain circuit. Fortunately, Achi was not a slow little girl and quickly changed her clothes. Black leather boots, a black wizard robe, and a black hooded magic cloak completely covered Achi's body. Only a pure and flawless face was hidden under the hood. Her big blue eyes were still deep and clear, making it difficult to ignore the look in them. There was no beauty or ugliness in the wizard cloak. It was almost the same for people of any size, so there was nothing to comment on. List nodded slightly. Parker shook his head quickly. It doesn't look good, it doesn't look good. Achi looks too ugly in black clothes. The only advantage is that it covers your blue hair. You should wear tawny clothes, a color like the handsome Parker, or you will be too far behind. There was no smile on Achi's little face. Instead, she felt a little awkward. Brother, Achi doesn't like to wear clothes. You'll get used to it. These fabrics are very uncomfortable. Brother, you wear clothes like this every day. Don't you feel uncomfortable? Because I'm already used to it. However, the clothes here really don't fit well. I'll feel much better after wearing them for a few more days. Wearing clothes is very inconvenient. They will get wet when you swim. Achi has worn leather armor once, and it's even more uncomfortable when it's wet. She rarely complained. Obviously, the clothes caused her a series of discomfort. Brother, in blood magic, clothes can be made into magic equipment that can be stored in the body at will. Achi wants to make such clothes herself. If you can improve the vampiric magic, it will naturally be a good thing. Also, make me a set of combat clothes that can be stored and stored. List understood what Achi was thinking. When he swam on the rainbow whale Lolth, he often had to endure the discomfort of wearing wet clothes. Achi was full of confidence. Well, this kind of magic is not difficult. Achi will soon be able to achieve it. Let's go to Flower Town and then go to Black Horse Island. There is a black dragon Paris there. Her physical problems are still waiting for me to solve. You can help me with this. I know. Brother said that Black Dragon Paris is the leader of the Black Horse Island Patrol Group. She once saw the light dragon and was eroded by the magic of the light dragon. Achi used to think about how to save this black dragon. I have a lot of inspiration that should be able to provide help to brother. Achi, who was wearing leather boots, walked a few steps to get used to the heels behind the boots. Because there were too many feces in the city, boots had finger-long heels. Outside the seaside villa stood List's knight, valet and others. Seeing List go in alone but come out with a female magician, they had some doubts in their hearts, but no one showed them. For List, the son of glory, this was just a normal operation. Whenever List went out riding a dragon, they would not be shocked at all. It was just that they were used to it. Bring the carriage over, List ordered. The knight immediately rushed the carriage. List personally helped Achi into the carriage, and then he himself boarded the carriage and accompanied Achi in the carriage around Flower Town. They enjoyed the work of ordinary people in the town and the beautiful countryside scenery. Finally, the carriage stopped at the entrance of the nameless castle. List showed his gentlemanly demeanor and helped Achi down. He smiled and said, Achi, you have lived in this castle for many days, but this is the first time you have seen it in its entirety. Yes. Achi raised her head and looked at the two-story castle, showing a happy smile. It was a beautiful memory worth remembering for a lifetime. She met her closest brother, List, and opened the door of the magic world under the leadership of List. Since then, her fate has completely changed. She is no longer a little siren in the sea, but a magician who pursues the truth. At this time, from the apple orchard, a huge black dog came to List's side, rubbed List, and looked up at Achi. His nose kept sniffing Achi's scent. It's Dosen. Achi recognized the big black dog and wanted to reach out and touch Dosen's fur. Suddenly, a familiar cry came from the castle. Chapter 683. This chapter is titled Starting from Today Wanjiajia. Wow. Naturally, it was the nameless castle's tyrant, the thorn sprite, Ella. It naturally knew Ella. Sometimes when List went to the castle by the sea, he would take it with him, so it was not a stranger at all. It was the first time it had seen Achi with feet, but it was not surprised at all. Probably its IQ was not enough to be surprised by whether Achi had feet or not. Moreover, Achi was dressed in a more common magician outfit. It landed on List's shoulder, grabbing a strand of pale blonde hair. Ella waved to Achi as a greeting. The siren's shell bathtub was good, but this time she didn't bring a bathtub, so Ella was not interested in her. Then it saw Dosen rubbing against List and immediately raised its hand to sow the seeds. When Trembling Woods saw this, he reflexively jumped back, and then found that Ella did not sow the seeds. Trembling Woods grinned at Ella. But soon it turned its head and continued to look at Achi. It was not known whether it was anxious to look at Achi or because it was afraid to face the tyrant Ella. Achi stretched out her hand and wanted to touch Dosen. List signaled with his eyes and Dosen stood still, letting the siren, who was more than 1.55 meters tall, touch its shiny black hair. Dosen is really obedient. He has been accompanying his brother in the war. He is really a loyal blizzard beast. Achi touched Dosen and looked into the depths of the apple orchard. The 8 little ones have grown so big. They are almost the same size as Dosen. Is the smallest one Stupid Woman? Yes, it's a pity that Stupid Woman can no longer give birth to little blizzard beasts. Otherwise, I would have a blizzard beast legion and it would be easy to attack the city. At this time, the butler Carter came over, bowed and asked, Master, who is this magician? Achi Royd's truth. She is my sister, Mr. Carter. From now on, Achi will live in the castle. She will have the same status as me. List introduced Achi to Carter. Ask Mrs. Morrison to prepare a room for Achi. Buy whatever she needs. Also, Achi is a vegetarian. Prepare more fruits for her diet. Yes, master. Carter quickly bowed to Achi. Hello, Miss Achi. I am the butler of Master's Castle, Carter Clay Pot. If you need anything, please tell me. I will listen to you on behalf of all the servants in the castle. In fact, he was very curious about Achi's identity and how she became his master's sister. He had accompanied the rise of the Tulip family all his life, so he was very clear about the bloodline relationship between the members of the family. There was definitely no relative named A. Caroids. There was not even a magician relative, and nobles rarely practiced magic. However, this did not prevent him from obeying List's instructions and treating Achi as the owner of the castle. He did not speculate about Achi's true identity or the relationship between her and List. He just treated her as a real brother and sister. Achi nodded and did not speak. She did not like to express herself in front of strangers. Soon List took Achi to the living room of the castle. Butler Carter quickly summoned all the servants in the castle to meet the new owner of the castle. However, there was no grand introduction. Achi did not like this kind of noisy scene. She preferred to read quietly, instead of getting along with people and socializing. At noon they had lunch in the castle. Only List and Achi were at the table. In front of Achi there was only a small fruit plate with a variety of fruits. In front of List, there was a dazzling array of chicken, fish and eggs. Each of them was served on a large plate and the portions were plentiful. Compared to Achi, who could eat a few raspberries for a meal, he almost had to eat the food expenses of a commoner's family for several years. Not only did he have to eat and drink well, but the cost of magic potions was also large. After all, he was not alone. There was a fire dragon in his body. After eating, List asked, "How does it feel to live in the castle?" "It's a little constrained. Achi doesn't really like so many people watching her eat. Feels weird. I wasn't used to it before, but now I've adapted. The social system is like this. These are the basic etiquette that a noble needs to maintain." Then let's go to your room and have a look. If there's anything you're not satisfied with, let the servants change it again. Achi's room was next to List's room. Because there had been no women living in the castle for a long time, the furnishings were made of quilts and bedsheets prepared for List before. List preferred pure colors and a dark style, so Achi's room looked a bit old-fashioned. There was no lively temperament that a young girl's boudoir should have. However, Achi didn't care about this at all. The place she proposed to improve was the absence of books. If there are no books in the bedroom, it will not be comfortable at all. There should be a few rows of bookshelves and you can wander in the sea of knowledge. That way, even when you sleep, you can dream of exploring the truth. List's mouth twitched. The little siren was still captured by the truth. Like most magicians, she always wanted to pursue knowledge and explore the truth. "Mr. Carter, move all the magic books in my study to Achi's bedroom. Just move half of them over. The study also needs some magic books to decorate." In the afternoon. Departure to Black Horse Island. List was going to ride the colorful whale Lolth and take Achi to Flower Town. However, Achi, who was a little depressed in the castle, quickly became lively after entering the sea. "Brother, don't ride Lolth. Let Achi send brother to Black Horse Island with a shell." Ha! Soon List understood how magical Achi's shell was. Not only could it be turned into a hair clip, but it could also be used as a shell airship. The waterspout carried the shell below at a speed of at least 200 kilometers per hour. The shell maintained a height of 10 meters above the sea, whistling and galloping, and it took only half an hour to reach Black Horse Port. When List and Achi jumped from the shell and landed on the wooden planks of the dock, all the workers immediately saluted List under the leadership of the dock officials. List did not bring any entourage and there was no ostentation, but this did not damage his heroic image. In the Black Horse Island territory he was the faith. Soon officials brought 2 horses. Changed to a carriage. List had not taught Achi how to ride a horse, and a mage wearing a magic robe was not suitable for riding a horse. The port officials did not have good eyesight. After changing to a carriage they went directly to the mage tower. At the same time, someone was sent to inform the head of the patrol group, Paris, to come over. On the first floor of the mage tower, Dean Christruth saw Achi next to List. Achi's petite figure and flawless face were impossible to ignore. And as a great mage, Chris could feel a magic aura from Achi that made her heart palpitate. "Lord Viscount, who is this Mr. Magician?" Chris asked directly. "Let's find a quiet room and talk." List did not intend to hide it from Chris. He still needed Chris to support Achi's magic research. Led by Chris, the 3 went directly to her office on the mage tower. After sending away several magic apprentices who acted as assistants, Chris personally made tea for List and Achi. Tea had now become a popular drink in the mage tower. "Chris, please sit down." List said directly without any foreshadowing, "You must be curious about the identity of Achi Royd's truth. I hope you are not too surprised. In addition to being my sister, she is also a magic shooter." Clatter. As soon as his voice fell. Chapter 684. Her mental fortitude is still not strong enough, List thought regretfully as he watched Chris accidentally break the teacup. Magic shooters and Dragon Knight were unfathomable existences, but as a Sky Knight or a great sorcerer, they were experienced and knowledgeable people with status. Their mental fortitude should not be so weak. However, he still said gently, "Calm down, Chris. There is no need to be so surprised." Chris looked down at the broken teacup and the spilled tea on the floor, and seemed to understand that she was too surprised. "Lord Viscount, are you sure you are not wrong? Your sister is so young, Are you sure she is not a great sorcerer but a legendary magic shooter? You should know that I am not a person who likes to joke. Achi has only recently come into contact with the weave and completed the elemental transformation, becoming a true magic shooter. She is probably the Grand Duchy of Sapphire, the only magic shooter born in the Iron and Steel Ridge and the Eagle Bear Kingdom in the past 100 years. Is she really a magic shooter? Chris clutched her chest with one hand, still looking at Achi in disbelief. She had accidentally broken the teacup just now because of the sudden shock, but the shattering of the teacup had also dissolved her shock and allowed her to quickly calm down. She felt that List might be joking. However, there was not a hint of a joke in List's tone. And this seemingly petite, clear-eyed and flawless female sorcerer did not seem to be joking at all. Most importantly, the faint aura emitted from her body made her heart palpitate, but when she tried to capture it carefully, the feeling disappeared as if it was just an illusion. But as a great sorcerer, her 5 senses were sharp, and she was especially sensitive to magic. Chris absolutely did not believe that she would randomly hallucinate. So, it was very likely that all of this was real. The petite female sorcerer in front of her was really a magic shooter. Known as the embodiment of truth that walked the secular world, she had gradually become a legendary magic shooter. Great sorcerers like Chris had never heard of a living magic shooter. They had only more or less read the magic books passed down by magic shooters, and admired the elegance of magic shooters from a few words. Odom Truth, Kawasaki Truth. Many mages could call out the names of these magic shooters, but they were basically all magic shooters of the Moon Empire era. Bathed in the glory of the magicians ruling the world, all other professions were regarded as heresy, and only the magicians were orthodox. From the mainland to the moon there were legends about them. Unfortunately, as the times changed, the knight quickly replaced the sorcerer as the rightful ruler of the world. Although the other ancient warriors and ancient mages were not treated as heretics, they were still being devoured and destroyed. The mischievous List was about to explain to Chris why Achi was a magic shooter in detail, fully enjoying the change in her expression from disbelief to confusion, to shock and finally to belief. Achi suddenly raised her hand without saying a word. Then, a water arrow suddenly condensed and the next moment, the water arrow flashed from her hand to Chris, hovering less than 3 inches in front of her. This sudden turn of events gave Chris another fright. But looking at the suspended water arrow in front of her, she was immediately stunned. This is, magic shooters' control over magic is completely different from that of archmages. Chris, you can use your heart to feel this water arrow because it is condensed from the magic power of the weave, and maintaining it consumes the magic power of the weave. As long as I want it to, it can exist for a very, very long time. It was practically the first time Achi had said such a long sentence to a stranger. It surprised List. It made Chris tremble even more. In her knowledge, once magic was released, it could not be stopped. It could only continue to be released or directly collapse. However, a basic magic water arrow just hovered in front of her. She could clearly feel the magic power that continuously maintained the water arrow. She subconsciously stretched out her finger and touched the water arrow itself. The condensed water passed through her finger, but there were no signs of collapse. In an instant, the magic power that belonged to a high magic was captured by her. She did not understand this kind of magic, but it did not prevent her from feeling the pressure of the high magic power. What powerful magic, incredible magic. Chris retracted her finger. She no longer looked at Achi with bewilderment in her eyes, but it was quickly filled with passion. Your Excellency Achi Lloyd's Truth, great magic shooter, please allow Chris to offer her highest respect to you. With that, she knelt on one knee and solemnly performed a rare etiquette. Even in the face of her savior List, she had never performed such a pious etiquette. In the final analysis, whether it was a knight or a mage, they all worshipped the strong more. The magic shooter Achi was clearly far stronger than the Sky Knight List. List was not jealous. If he came over on Leo now, he believed that Chris would also sincerely salute. But there was no need for that. He had always won the respect and loyalty of his subordinates by virtue of his charisma, not by virtue of unfathomable strength. Moreover, at this moment, it was Achi's time to perform, so how could he steal the show? Achi had too little contact with humans, but as intelligent as she was and as powerful as she was, she did not need to know too much about communication. She just said what she wanted to say. Chris, my brother asked you to cooperate with me to study magic. I have many experimental ideas that I need your help with. Chris was pleasantly surprised and said, It is my supreme honor to be able to serve the great magic shooter. Then she quietly added, If I can get 1 or 2 pointers from you, it will be even more exciting. Sure, you can study magic for me and I will find time to guide you in your practice. Qi easily dealt with Chris. With her status, it was true that she only needed to crook her finger and a great mage would rush to work for her. The position of a magic shooter in the hearts of a mage was sacred and inviolable. Seeing this, List was pleased and said, Chris, Qi's identity needs to be kept secret and cannot be mentioned to anyone. Why, Lord Viscount, His Excellency Achilles is the embodiment of truth that walks in the secular world. Shouldn't he be spreading the light of truth to the world? If His Excellency Achilles needs a laboratory, Chris is willing to give up the mage tower and serve by his side. Wait a few years. She has just advanced to magic shooter, so she needs some time to adapt and not be disturbed by the secular world. List said unquestionably, you will still be in charge of the mage tower. After all, it was originally built for you. Qi will live in my castle and her laboratory will be built directly in the castle. Qi did not speak and let List arrange it. Chris immediately said eagerly, then Lord Viscount, can I have a room in the castle? I hope to be able to serve His Excellency Achilles at all times. Qi did indeed need a great mage as an assistant. According to many magic books, the ancient magic shooters were surrounded by a large number of mages, like the followers of a lord's knight. List thought for a moment and said, I can reserve a room for you in the castle, but your work will still be arranged in the mage tower. The team of mages there needs your leadership. Chapter 685. Chris had countless questions to ask Qi. But now was not a good time to communicate because List had sent someone to call Paris, the head of the patrol group, to the mage tower. Today's main task was to solve the aftereffects of the Black Dragon gang for Paris. My Lord Dean Chris. Paris was still dressed as a valiant mercenary with leather armor, a big sword, and a ponytail. List introduced, this magician is Qi Royd's truth, she is my sister. Paris was slightly surprised and then immediately greeted, greetings Sir Achilles Royds. Her intuition told her that the relationship between this magician and List was unusual, but she was already a follower of List, and those ambiguous thoughts at the beginning had long been settled in the bottom of her heart. The wandering life when she was young made her cherish the hard-won life, so she was able to put herself in the right position. Qi looked at Paris curiously and did not speak. This was the first time she had seen a Black Dragon gang, and she wanted to take a closer look at what kind of state a human being was in after being infected by the magic of a dragon. But just from the surface, Paris was no different from a normal person. The three women were supposed to be a drama, but Qi did not like to talk, and the relationship between Chris and Paris was sloppy, so the atmosphere was more solemn. List did not like this atmosphere and went straight to the point. Paris, I called you here to solve your physical problems. Today in Chris' laboratory, Qi and I will work together to solve the magic erosion problem of the light dragon for you. You have to cooperate carefully. Ah, my lord, this is... Paris was surprised. Chris was also surprised. The magic erosion of the light dragon? Paris, your light magic affinity is caused by the magic erosion of the light dragon? Seeing this, List ordered, Captain Paris, tell them your story. Let Dean Chris know about it too. She can help from the side. Paris immediately told her story, how a mouse became a black dragon, how she escaped after killing the court magician, and how she followed her sister's trail to Flower Town. She was overwhelmed by List's personal charm and was willing to stay here with her sister. It turns out that the white dragon recorded in the magic books is true. The thief is really courageous. He actually reversed the transformation ritual and made you a living black dragon. Unfortunately, the thief is missing. Otherwise, the probability of curing will be much higher with one more sample. Paris still had the same attitude. Actually, it doesn't matter if I'm cured or not, my lord. Thank you for everything you've done for me. If it's too much trouble, this is actually quite good. It's not troublesome at all. You don't have to say any more. If you can live a few more years, why should you live less? List looked directly at Qi. What do you think we should do first? Let her transform into a black dragon first. Transforming into a black dragon will shorten her lifespan. If it was an ordinary magician, Paris would not listen to him no matter how much he said. But List casually ordered, and she directly stirred up the light dragon magic in her body. To be precise, it should be the light dragon high magic, and the magic has the characteristics of an advanced nature. After taking off the hindering leather armor, boom. In the blink of an eye, the clothes on Paris' body were torn apart. The veins on her originally white arms swelled and grayish-white scales grew out of her flesh. Her arms were more than twice as thick, and her fingers turned into sharp claws, with sharp nails that were an inch long. After her arms, her legs and body followed suit, bursting her clothes. Her veins bulged everywhere and scales grew in the muscles under her skin, making her body twice as big. Then even her head began to change. Fine gray-white scales grew on her face and forehead, and the color of her hair gradually turned gray-white. Apart from her face, there was no longer any trace of Paris's appearance. Her whole body was a huge half-dragon and half-human, with torn clothes hanging on her body. At first glance, she looked like the female mutant in X-Men, but she was gray-white and more ferocious. As soon as the transformation was completed, Paris's body became a looming transparent existence without the need for her to actively exert light and shadow. "My lord, this is the final form of my black dragon gang. It takes a lot of magic to maintain this form. It seems that my body is melting. Keep the black dragon form, Paris. Don't worry. With the current strength of a chi and I, it will not be difficult to solve the problem for you. Just trust me." Liszt quickly cast magic eyes and observed Paris, whose whole body was shrouded in a black mist. The black mist was the power left in her body by the light dragon. Strangely, the magic of the light dragon was not a group of sunlight, but a dark gray similar to the dark magic. "I believe, my lord." Paris's voice was rough, like two pieces of dry wood rubbing against each other. Chris was fascinated by the scene and muttered to herself, "It's really a black dragon. Is this the magic of the light dragon that distorts the light in the room and gives people an illusion?" She hadn't touched the magic network, so it was difficult for her to understand the special nature of high magic. In front of Paris, Liszt and Achi were surrounding the 2-meter-tall black dragon, constantly peeping and discussing. "Achi, do you have any clues? Brother can try to see if he can extract the high magic of the light dragon. With brother's strength he should be able to do it." "No, I can't extract it by force. I saw that the high magic of the light dragon has been integrated with the cells of Paris's body. Once the high magic of the light dragon is extracted, Paris's body will collapse. Use the principle of resonance to extract it, so that the high magic of the light dragon is separated from the cells." Achi knew what cells were. Liszt taught her in detail about biology in middle school. "This can be tried." Liszt quickly held Paris's claws. "Paris, relax your body, don't try to resist my do chi." "Understood, my lord." The next moment, Liszt urged his own dragon do chi, constantly adjusting the frequency, trying to integrate with the light dragon magic in Paris's body, and then strip it away little by little. This kind of attempt is almost impossible for ordinary knight and magician, but the dragon knight broke the impossible. The dragon knight resonance can make a person and a dragon resonate, and now it is just a resonance of the high magic of the light dragon. After trying a few times, Liszt showed an imperceptible smile. "It's not a big problem." Then the dragon do chi surged violently. It drove the high magic of the light dragon in Paris's body to surge together, and it quickly reached the same frequency, began to resonate and fuse and continued to boil and pull out. The principle is similar to the dragon knight resonance, but it is simpler to operate. It can barely be regarded as a lower version of the dragon knight resonance. "My body is hot," Paris said with difficulty. This is the dragon do chi burning her body. After all, Liszt's dragon do chi is of the fire attribute, with its own burning and burning nature. Even if it converges, it will still cause serious effects on Paris's body. Bear it. Chapter 686. Holding Paris's hand and performing a simple dragon knight resonance, he pulled out the light dragon high magic and took out a fire dragon needle from the gem space with his other hand. The fire dragon needle is a storage equipment made of volcanic glass, which can store the fire dragon's will belonging to the supreme magic. However, Liszt has not used the fire dragon needle to store the magic belonging to the high magic. This time he intends to experiment. After extracting Paris's light dragon high magic, can he put it into the fire dragon needle and slowly study it? After all, it is another elemental dragon's high magic. For mages such as Achi, it is definitely a material of great research value. "It's so hot." Paris tried her best to endure the raging dragon's do chi in her body. To achieve the effect of dragon knight resonance, it is necessary to use her body as the home field for delicate and violent operations. Fortunately, this process did not last too long. Liszt, who is familiar with the real dragon knight resonance, has successfully merged his dragon's do chi with Paris's light dragon high magic, and then slowly extracted it from Paris's body by releasing the do chi. Along a sharp finger, it is guided into the fire dragon needle. Unfortunately, the fire dragon needle can stop the fire dragon high magic, but it can't stop the light dragon high magic. The light dragon high magic, which is integrated with the dragon's do qi, directly passed through the syringe of the fire dragon needle and dissipated in the air. Since it can't be stored, List did not force it. He continued to guide and release. After about a quarter of an hour, he finally extracted all the light dragon high magic from Paris's body. Gradually, Paris's black dragon form began to fade. Her scales withered and her body shrunk. The slightly plump and valiant female mercenary had returned. However, because her clothes had been torn, a few strands of cloth could not cover her white female skin, and the 2 key points on her chest were clearly exposed to List. However, before List could shift his mind from the light dragon high magic and carefully look at Paris's body, Chris, who was guarding him, had taken off her magic cloak and covered Paris's body. List saw this. He glanced at Chris faintly. What a blind guy. In any case, Paris's black dragon gang power has been completely solved. With the withdrawal of power, Paris, who had returned to her human body, slowly fell into Chris' arms. Lord Viscount, Commander Paris has used up all her energy. Will there be any problems? There shouldn't be any problems. List loosened his hand and calmed the dragon fighting energy in his body. However, her body has been eroded by the light dragon high demon for too long. The sudden separation will certainly cause a long period of weakness. She needs a large amount of nutrition to supplement her body's needs. At this time, Achi, who had been observing for a long time, gently held Paris's hand, sensing the condition of Paris's body. After a moment she said, "Big brother, although Paris's body is weak and she can't feel the high magic of the light dragon, Achi can feel that the light magic is still in her body. Moreover, her body seems to be automatically refining the light magic. It's like fighting spirit but also like magic." "You mean to say she can now cultivate both do qi and magic?" List was very surprised. Achi nodded. In essence, magic and do qi are in conflict. Magic requires the spirit to be released, and do qi requires the spirit to be withdrawn. They are 2 different cultivation systems. But Paris's body has been specially transformed by the light dragon and has become similar to the body of World of Warcraft. Magic is natural. Can it be like this? Let me think for a moment. List sat in a chair thinking, but in fact calling the smoke mission. Mission completed. Reward: Paris's light magic swordsman path. Light magic swordsman path? He understood that Achi's guess was correct. The reward of the smoke mission for Paris's path of cultivation was indeed a system of magic and do qi cultivation. Probably only humans whose bodies have been completely transformed by the high magic of the dragon can absorb half of the magic in the air and half of the magic in their own cells, like in World of Warcraft. Light magic swordsman sounds very cool. I wonder if I can let Leo mass produce some fire magic swordsman in the future? Or I can simply work as a fire magic swordsman myself. It won't hinder the Dragon Knight's cultivation. I can also learn some fire magic, which is also a wonderful experience. Between fantasy and fantasy. The smoke serpentines had changed. Mission: the formula for the potion to enhance the vitality of the little person has been sent to Cousin Miopal. It may play a role in the continuation of the Taro family's bloodline, but Marquis Merlin is an elder worthy of your respect. Perhaps you should find an opportunity to listen to his teachings. Reward: clues to the Wyvern Phoenix. Wyvern Phoenix. Does Super Dragon species World of Warcraft really exist? It seems that I have to go to Red Crab Island as soon as possible and see Marquis Merlin. List had long planned to see Marquis Merlin, but he had been busy and had not been able to get away. Now that the smoke mission had been urged, he had to find time to go to Red Crab Island. Blinking his eyes to disperse the smoke in front of him, List returned to his senses. Looking at Achi and Chris, who were studying the unconscious Paris, he immediately said, "Study it and wait for Paris to wake up before letting her cooperate. For now, Chris, arrange for someone to take care of Paris and let her recover as soon as possible." Chris responded, "Yes, Lord Viscount." Achi said, "Brother, Achi wants to see Mary Dawn Daybreak and study the magic of storing objects with her." She had always been thinking about getting dressed. List naturally would not refuse. After a while, Mary rushed over. Now that she was a pure-blood vampire, her strength had increased a lot. Freed from the shackles of the Black Knight family, she did not have much work to do, and her life was very comfortable. Her main energy was now devoted to the development of the underworld. The population of Black Horse Island had exceeded 100,000, and there must be many talented teenagers who would be tempted by blood and want to become a vampire. Mary and the blood servants were looking for suitable teenagers, of course, List had rules that forbade forced development of vampires, and they must get his approval before they could be transformed. And so far, Mary found 3 teenagers with blood magic aptitude, but List rejected them. 2 of them were new serfs and were not loyal enough. One was a magic apprentice valued by Chris, so he was not allowed to develop into a vampire. "My lord, what can I do for you?" "Come and meet my sister, Aroyd's Truth." "My lord's sister?" "Dear Lord Achilles, Mary Dawn Daybreak greets you." Mary immediately performed a noble etiquette. Achi nodded and said, "I want to study magic that can integrate objects into my body, and I need your help." Mary responded, "As you wish, Lord Achilles." "Then let's hurry up and study it." List interrupted, "Let's stroll around Black Horse Island today, Achi. It won't be too late to study it tomorrow." Achi was a little tangled, but it was hard for her to refuse List's proposal. Okay then. List did not want Achi to indulge in the world of magic too much. After all, she was still a minor siren and should have a happy childhood. But he was not so polite to others. "Mary, you carefully sort out the magic of storing objects today, and when Achi needs it tomorrow, be sure to provide the most detailed data." Chapter 687. From East to West, from South to North. List took Achi on the Chocobo Loki and quickly strolled around Black Horse Island, admiring all the thriving towns and the increasingly orderly plantations and workshops. This is white paper. At present, the quality is barely up to the standard for writing, but further improvement is needed. When the process is truly improved, it will be the era of white paper replacing thick bast paper. This technology will be an important pillar industry after the founding of the People's Republic. Achi rubbed the white paper. It's amazing that just some bark and straw can be made into paper that looks better than thick bast paper. Of course, magic is amazing, but technology is also a force that cannot be ignored. Well, my brother said a lot that once the power of steam is developed, it will change the whole world. List had talked about the Industrial Revolution. Watt's invention of the steam engine led to the Industrial Revolution of the 18th century. Of course, he said it in a speculative and prospective way. Leo is an elemental dragon and cannot produce gems and metals, so the development of industry with its supreme magic is the fastest way to realize its value. In fact, it was not the fastest way. The fastest way was to rob it and launch the development order, just like the Sapphire Grand Duke. If the impact of white paper was still relatively weak, it was more like a handicraft workshop. Then when visiting the glass workshop, she saw that under the burning of the fire dragon's supreme magic, the stone turned into a fire-like liquid, and then was taken out, extended, processed and slowly cooled into different glassware. Achi felt a huge impact, and for the first time she felt the powerful potential of industry. This is called an assembly line. If it is only the power of one person, the glass produced will be very limited. But if each worker masters one of the processes, not only can it speed up production efficiency, but it can also effectively reduce the risk of technology leakage. I have been promoting assembly line magic work in the Magic Academy based on this principle. My brother's idea is really amazing. Achi expressed shock. List replied easily, "It's just basic operations." Apart from the glass workshop, which was slightly industrialized, the other workshops did not break away from the shadow of the original handicraft workshop. At most, List had higher requirements for hygiene and environment. Everything looked cleaner and tidier, but in essence there was no change. What changed was the infrastructure. The roads were flat and wide rubber roads, made of bricks mixed with rubber water. Tall water towers could be seen everywhere in the residential and workshop areas. These water towers were used for fire fighting and decontamination. They were used to flush the underground pipes regularly. Every house had a sewage pipe that was connected to the underground pipes of the city. Toilets were everywhere, strictly adhering to List's requirements to not urinate or defecate anywhere. Violators would not only be fined, but would also be reformed through labor. List also planned to promote the water wheel and the high bridge waterway. In other words, the water wheel would draw water from rivers and lakes and transport it through high-altitude pipes to the water tower in the town. However, the town was currently busy with construction and had not yet planned to this step. As long as the needs of the castle were met, the progress would not be slowed down. Just like the aristocratic lords did not care about the city's hygiene, they lived in the castle, and the stench did not affect them. List also lived in the castle. As long as the castle fully enjoyed healthy and convenient services, it did not matter if the city was backward. In fact, the town under his jurisdiction was already a model of civilization in the world, and its livability was similar to that of the great aristocratic castles. Many businessmen chose to buy houses in Flower Town. They could only buy houses in Flower Town. Black Horse Island had not yet been open to settlement. Living in such a clean and hygienic environment, it was really difficult to go back to those dirty cities after getting used to it. Even many small aristocrats living in rural manors went to Flower Town to buy houses and enjoy the convenience of a modern town, with delicious food and rich drama. The port town, which was gradually developing into a city, was the focus of the visit. A barren land near Green Tea Town was also the focus of the visit. List pointed to the empty land and said to Achi, "It was here that Leo and I met the invisible dragon, a kind of sacred dragon. It ate my beef and smoked grass and gave me these space gems." List took out a space gem and handed it to Achi. "This space gem is for you, Achi. As a gift for your promotion to magic shooter, let me put it on for you." The space gem has been inlaid in the mithril ring made by the Iron Knight Alvin Eagle sword. Can be called a space ring dazzling. Holding Achi's slender hand, List put the sparkling ring on her left middle finger under Achi's amazed and delighted eyes. "You can study it. Maybe one day I will ride the invisible dragon, and then I can have as many space gems as I want." Once upon a time, a space gem was like a priceless treasure, carefully collected by him, not daring to show it in front of others. He was reluctant to give it to anyone. However, after becoming a Dragon Knight, he no longer cared whether the space gem would be discovered or not. Moreover, he still had 2 enchanting dragon fruit. Sooner or later he would ride the invisible dragon. At that time, space gems would become an important gem resource after his founding and trade with various countries. Compared with sapphires, rubies, and emeralds, the value of space gems was obviously greater. "I have Leo and the invisible dragon. The fighting strength of these 2 dragons will protect my country. I believe that at that time, even without a kingdom as a backer, no one will dare to provoke me." It was normal for a kingdom to have 6 or 7 dragon knights, but the dragon knight would involve each other, and there were very few truly free dragon knights. The fall of a dragon knight would cause great turmoil in the country. Naturally, they would not dare to send a dragon knight to launch a war to slay a dragon. Before the establishment of the Sapphire Kingdom, the Eagle Kingdom had only sent 1 dragon knight to launch a war to slay a dragon. If they had sent 2 dragon knights, perhaps the Grand Duchy of Sapphire would not have had anything to do with it. Is this a space gem? It requires magic to stimulate it. It's amazing, it can actually have an independent space as if it does not exist in this world, yet it is connected to this world. Brother is not only a dragon knight of the fire dragon, but also has friendly exchanges with the invisible dragon. Achi was very shocked not only by the space gem but also by List. Conquering a fire dragon was already an incredible existence. Now, List had obviously begun to conquer a second dragon, the invisible dragon of the sacred dragons. This almost made her lose herself in the worship of List, facing the little siren's adoring eyes. Chapter 688. This chapter is Brother Fruit's Dad Wanzhaojia. Construction of the second floor of Thorn Castle has begun and will be completed within the year. After visiting Thorn Castle with Achi, it was already dark. The chef of the port town had prepared a sumptuous dinner. Almost all the main officials and elite Earth Knight of Black Horse Island attended tonight's dinner. The reason was simple. Tonight was a banquet where List introduced Achi to everyone, so that everyone in the territory would understand Achi's identity, so as not to cause any misunderstandings. No matter what these officials and Knight guessed, it was a fact that the Lord had a sister. For the next 3 days, Achi studied clothing storage magic with Mary and other vampires, while sorting out a batch of magic experiments for Chris to study. List basically handed over the content of magic to Achi and Chris, and no longer worried about it. He no longer messed around with the magic books, he was really afraid of being urged even more. Almost every day the Count would send a messenger knight to ask if the List's aerial manuscript was completed. No one had urged him before. Writing books was a form of relaxation, pleasure, and elegance. However, after being urged by others, writing books became a burden, and there was no longer any joy in it. He preferred to practice Dragon Knight resonance with Leo, soar in the sky, and observe everything in the world from a dragon's perspective, the colorful colors and the trajectory. Both the man and the dragon were growing rapidly, and their strength could be felt all the time. Leo could even cross the sea between Coral Island and Black Horse Island. In the past he was very young, and his physical strength was not enough to fly more than 100 kilometers. But now he could easily cross the sea, but he could not cross more than 500 kilometers. He needed to find a foothold to recover his body. Although the dragon was magical and powerful, the consumption of the dragon was also huge, especially when the high magic in the young dragon was constantly condensed into supreme magic, and he was often hungry. When the dragon became an adult, the supreme magic would have been condensed, and his endurance would probably increase. Aside from flying in the sky, List and Leo spent most of their time studying the Dragon Warrior Chi Secret Manual. They were preparing to study a set of Chi Secret Manuals for Dragon Knights. At present, he still had no clue about the Dragon Do Chi Secret Manual. He was only repeatedly using the Red Sun Rising Flame and other Do Chi Secret Manuals. He strived to figure out the magic circulation method in Leo's body during the process of continuously releasing battle aura scrolls. Then he would use this information to design new moves. List was busy every day. He had just obtained the power of the Dragon Knight, so he did not want to waste a single second. Just like a Chi was constantly adapting to the power of a magic shooter. Even Paris began to control her new body without the light dragon, attempting to recultivate. List directly let her try to dual cultivate Chi and magic, walking the path of a light swordsman. Magic, you can only practice light magic. You can also only practice light Do Chi. Although the power of the light dragon has been expelled, your body has completed the transformation. You can only refine light Do Chi and absorb light magic. But this isn't a bad thing. Maybe it's a good thing. Sir, can I still cultivate to my previous strength? Yes. List gave an affirmative answer. The upper limit of your strength has increased significantly. I'm afraid your future can be more brilliant. Maybe you can become the first light swordsman who is both a great mage and a sky knight. When you succeed in surpassing yourself, I will give you a new surname. Paris asked with concern, what surname? Lightsaber, Paris Lightsaber. It was not uncommon to have a sword as a surname. For example, the only Iron Knight of Black Horse Island, Alvin Eagle Sword, was named after a sword. However, Paris's lightsaber sounded like a sword in her name, but in fact, it was named after her profession. Her profession was a new light swordsman. Paris Lightsaber. The former mercenary clenched the big sword in her hand, and for a moment her fighting spirit rose again. Sir, I will definitely take the surname Lightsaber. I believe in you. List smiled. Such a smile was like a spring breeze. Paris could not help but fall into a momentary trance. Perhaps it was such a smile that pulled her heart back to the light from the darkness. Time passed by in a flash. There was only one day left before the celebration banquet for the Count's promotion to Marquis. The messenger knight of Tulip Castle rushed to Flower Town early and informed List, Sir Viscount, Sir Lord hopes that you can go to Flower Town today. Many guests have arrived at Tulip Castle, including your uncle's family. I see. If other guests came, List would have ignored them. Who cares if they were big or small nobles? In a few years they would be people of two countries. There was no value in socializing. He was a person who was too lazy to socialize. He could be more aristocratic than any aristocrat, but there was still a heart in his body that wanted to break away from the noise. But when Masillo's family came, it would be unreasonable for him not to go. Soon he set off for Flower Town, ready to have a good chat with his uncle's family. When he arrived at Tulip Castle, the already lively castle suddenly boiled up. All the nobles got up to greet him and waited at the gate of Tulip Castle to see the second strongest person in the Grand Duchy. Father. List, who was used to seeing such a scene, was not the least bit uneasy. He first saluted the Oxtail Marquis and then saw his uncle Masillo Longtaro. He saluted and greeted them again. Uncle, Aunt, Meopal Angela, welcome to Tulip Castle. Using his identity as a member of the Tulip family, he performed the aristocratic etiquette, expressing his intention to separate from the family. Perhaps it was very strange. Some lesser aristocrats separated from the family after obtaining a lesser sprite. However, List, who was already famous in Sapphire, still did not separate from the family. However, no one raised any objections. List, you are even more graceful than when you were in the Eagle Kingdom. Masillo laughed heartily and patted List on the shoulder with a gratified expression. His nephew had really made him proud. With such a relative, the Taro family had become more confident. Cousin Meopal was even more excited. It has only been a long time since we last met, yet you have become a child of glory of Sapphire. This is too enviable. Little Princess Angela also said, for Sapphire to have such a powerful knight like you is the glory of the country. List responded with a smile. Following the introduction of the Oxtail Marquis, List greeted other aristocrats that he knew or did not know. He was neither too arrogant nor too humble. he maintained a noble and distant gentlemanly demeanor. Even though he was a cut above others as a dragon knight, he still upheld the worldview that everyone was equal. He did not feel that there was any difference between aristocrats and commoners. He did not feel that aristocratic bloodlines were truly noble and that commoner bloodlines were inherently despicable. Giving commoners more meat could also give birth to a genius knight. His youngest follower, Emily, was a super genius born from a commoner. If one really wanted to haggle, these aristocrats were no different from lowly ants in front of his dragon knight identity. After a round of greetings, after receiving countless flattery, everyone finally returned to the castle's living room under the urging of the oxtail marquis. Liszt did not like crowded places, so he directly pulled Meople to the oxtail marquis study to chat. "Cousin, did you receive the formula I sent you?" "I received it and asked the great wizard to prepare it according to the formula. The potion should be ready by the time I return," Meople said, and then asked skeptically, Can the potion really promote the vitality of the midgets in my body?" "It should be true. Cyril would not dare to deceive me. Since he offered the potion formula to me, it shows that the formula is really effective. I hope it really works. Alas, I have been under too much pressure recently." "Don't be nervous, relax. The more nervous you are about giving birth, the more likely it is that things will turn out contrary to your wishes. Take the potion and stick to eating the medicinal ingredients and food I sent you, and conceiving a child won't be too far away." Liszt comforted him and then asked, "How is grandfather's health?" "So, sometimes good, sometimes bad. However, grandfather's mentality is very good. He believes that living one more day is one more day earned. He just misses you as well as Levis and Elvira. I also miss grandfather and have been preparing to find time to visit grandfather, but I have been delayed by other matters. After my father's celebration banquet is over, I will go with you to Red Crab Island." Chapter 689. At night. After declining Levis's proposal to go to Coral City to participate in some kind of party, Liszt and Meople, in addition to chatting, also discussed piano skills in the Tulip Castle's piano room. Meople really liked to play the piano. His skill was skillful and the rhythm was smooth. Liszt's skill was far from Meople's level, but he found another way to play his own original piano music. When he was in high spirits, the Smoke Mission also joined in the fun, making him recall two familiar melodies, Accompanying You and San San Swan. Together with the previously impersonated Fur Elise, the Liszt piano music collection contained 3 classical piano pieces. However, he didn't know if it was because his strength had increased, but his mental strength had also increased. Subsequently, he recalled several piano melodies and composed several classical piano pieces. Therefore, it didn't matter if he didn't play the piano, but once he did, he would inevitably amaze everyone and cause a sensation that would cause countless girls to orgasm. However, he rarely played the piano in public. He had long since passed the stage where he wanted people to worship and be obsessed with him. He preferred to quietly enjoy life. Liszt, you are a genius through and through. Not only is your cultivation amazing, but even your piano playing is so terrifying. If you were interested in playing the piano, I'm afraid you would be the first piano master born in the Grand Duchy of Sapphire. Your talent in composition is enough to stand shoulder to shoulder with masters like Czerny. Playing the piano is just a small skill to cultivate one's mind. Meople, there is no need to indulge in it." Liszt simply tapped a few keys, then turned around and no longer played. "You should learn from me and put more time into cultivation. Strength is the standard that determines the status of an aristocrat. Alas, I am already 25 years old this year and have barely touched the shackles of an Earth Knight. If I want to break through, I'm afraid I'll have to wait until next year." Meople's talent was pretty good. At least compared to Messiro, who had been forcibly turned into an ordinary Sky Knight, his talent was very strong. However, he was only a qualified successor to the Marquis. Sword Saint was probably his limit in the future. Compared to the genius Marquis Merlin, the descendants of the Taro family were a bit useless. Not only were their cultivation talents trash, but their fertility was also trash. Messiro and his wife had been plowing for many years, only to have Meople as their only son. Meople had spent more than a year making a dwarf, yet there was no sign of activity. Unlike the Tulip family, the Count had 3 sons. Now that the eldest son, Levis, had also given birth to a son, there was no need to worry about having children. If you don't have enough talent, then you'll have to work hard to make up for it. I'm afraid you're not as hardworking as Levis. Although the Taro family has provided you with more resources, it is very likely that you will be promoted to Sky Knight behind Levis, List said in a somewhat old-fashioned manner. He also had the qualifications to guide the other party. Miopal was very good at comforting himself. In any case, you are already used to falling behind, so it doesn't matter if you fall behind Levis. I have a very young follower. Apart from eating, drinking, and sleeping every day, she spends all her time practicing cultivation. I suspect that she will promote to Sky Knight before you. Amazing, you already have a sacred swordsman follower. This time you will have another Sky Knight follower. I still have 2 Sky Knight captives. If Alonso Cyclamen still does not pay the ransom, then I'm afraid that the 2 will also choose to pledge loyalty to me. Sky Knight captives? Alonso unexpectedly did not choose to pay the ransom? I also find it very strange. List did not know what Alonso was up to. Was he so extravagant that he did not care about the Sky Knight followers? Was he delayed by something, or was he hatching some scheme? Even if Alonso was hatching some scheme, there was no need to care about it. There was still the Grand Duke ahead of him. After resting for a night in Tulip Castle, List rode the Chocobo Loki early the next morning and returned to the Flower Town. Today was the celebration banquet for the promotion of the Earl of Coral Island to the Oxtail Marquis, so he needed to dress up and attend. He needed to bring his followers, retainers, and servants. He selected Clear Water Sword St. Yevich Peanut, Iron Knight Alvin Eagle Sword, Port Town Consultant Gort Mast, and Black Horse Island Orders of Chivalry Commander Marcus Wheel from among his followers, and let these 4 followers follow him to Tulip Castle to attend the banquet. To support the Tulip family, Sacred Swordsman, Iron Knight, were excellent signboards to decorate the facade. By the way, he brought along his youngest follower, Amelie, so that she could see the world as a retainer knight and relax at the same time. It was not a reasonable way to practice every day. Amelie did not want to rest, so he could only take her out to rest and relax. In addition, List also brought along Achi, who was dressed as a noble lady. Now that Achi had been announced as his sister, it was time to let his family know Achi and shock the Oxtail Marquis. Unknowingly, List had developed this bad taste. He was used to making some big news and enjoying the shock of the Oxtail Marquis. The expression of trying to hide it was very interesting. It was probably revenge for the other party always urging him to update List's Handbook of the Sky, making him lose his interest in writing. Brother, Achi doesn't want to attend the banquet, this dress is so uncomfortable. Achi was more attractive than any noble lady. A pure face paired with a gorgeous dress, smooth skin and petite figure, as well as a young and inexperienced demeanor, would definitely make all the noble ladies feel ashamed of their inferiority. Bringing Achi to the banquet was very likely to shield List from the vicious gazes of those female nobles. List could imagine how many aristocratic young ladies would be aiming at him at this banquet, as if they were hunting. After all, he was such an outstanding person. This is the life of humans, Achi. Learn to endure it first and then you will know how to enjoy it. List tidied up his laugh-pleated collar. I didn't like frac à brûler before, and thought it was a dress that a fool came up with to torture himself. But after getting used to it, it still feels very uncomfortable. The aristocratic dress of frac à brûler was cumbersome, strange and uncomfortable to wear. Perhaps it was this oddity that made it a symbol of nobility. The more cumbersome it was, the more orderly it was, and the stranger it was, the more outstanding it was. It symbolized aristocratic etiquette and nobility, which was completely different from the ordinary clothes of commoners. This was the biggest characteristic. But List did not like it very much. After I establish the country, the first thing I will reform is the dress. The dress must be simple and convenient, and on this basis can reflect the demeanor of nobility as much as possible. He flipped over and mounted the bird. Chapter 690. After calculating the time, the caravan arrived just before the luncheon began. Rolia, this is my sister Aki Roids. Truth. Help me take good care of her. She doesn't like to socialize, so she doesn't need to talk much with those noble ladies. Just don't make her feel restricted. I'll come back after I greet them. The first sentence was directed at Rolia Golden Oats, and the second sentence was directed at Achi. Rolia held Achi's arm in a friendly manner. You must be Achi. I heard List talk about you yesterday. He said that you're a great sorcerer. You look really young. Come on, let's go talk to grandmother in Lavera. Achi glanced at List and received a smile of encouragement. She then followed Rolia to the other side, where the noble ladies and ladies gathered. Last night, List told his family that he would bring his sister over today. He only revealed that Achi was a young great sorcerer who met him on a sea trip and became brother and sister by chance. Although the Marquis and the others were surprised by Achi's existence, they did not say much. After all, List had already been in theft, and he only needed to be responsible for his actions. Rolia was very intelligent and would take good care of Achi, so List was not worried. He followed Levis to greet the nobles who came today. Putting on a standard smile, politely displaying a set of noble etiquette, and accepting a few words of praise was enough to complete the task. The eldest prince was the most distinguished guest in Tulip Castle today. "Thank you for coming, Your Royal Highness." List naturally came to greet him. This icebound sword saint should be said to be a qualified successor of Sapphire. He had shown bravery in several battles, and had presided over the development on behalf of the Grand Duke many times. The iron mine of Coiling Dragon Mountain was also quickly transported back to the country under his leadership. "It hasn't been long since I last saw you, and you've already grown to such a height. It's amazing. Unfortunately, I don't have a third sister, or I would definitely marry you." The eldest prince was very enthusiastic. This was because the Oxtail Marquis had hinted that once List separated from the family, he would follow him. Having such an expert following him was a very honorable thing for the first prince. Moreover, as the future heir of Sapphire, he also needed powerful followers to help him build his career, or even to preside over the Expansion Order War. If he really had a younger sister, she would definitely facilitate this marriage. List responded calmly. He wasn't sure about the first princess's character, but based on the little princess's previous conduct, he should stay away from these princesses. Even if he was single for the rest of his life, he would not be willing to wear a bunch of green hats on his head. After exchanging a few words, Oxtail Marquis walked over and invited the first prince to take a seat. As the eldest prince sat at the head of the table, the Marquis of Deep Throat Island, Wallace Pineapple Green, followed closely behind him. The Marquis of Skin Island, Ramirez White Glutinous Rice, and the Marquis of Golden Island, Roderick Golden Oatmeal were also present. The nobles of the Blue Blood Alliance rarely attended the banquets of the feudal nobles, and Marquis Merlin was not in good health. Thus, only 3 marquises had come. However, the Marquis of Red Maple City, Grindenton Red Maple Leaf, and the Marquis of Quicksand City, Nesta Great Flower Huilan, had sent their children to attend the banquet. The Marquis of Red Crab Island, Merlin Long Taro, had naturally sent the Mesiro couple and the Miopal couple. Coupled with a large number of earls and nobles who independently followed the Grand Duke, a long table was filled with high-level Sapphire nobles, and List was impressively among them. As for the other minor nobles and aristocratic families, Levis and Madame Marie would entertain them on their behalf. "Everyone, please raise your glasses with me." After the wine was filled, the eldest prince picked up the best flower wine in the crystal bottle and raised his glass. Everyone raised their wine glasses. The eldest prince continued, "This year's expansion order has ended, and the results are rich. Since the founding of Sapphire 153 years ago, it can be ranked in the top 5 of all the expansion orders. Naturally, the Earl of Coral Island, Lee William Tulip, who has made great contributions in this expansion order." He looked at the Marquis of Oxtail, and his tone was gentle with a little excitement and surging. "After my father, the Sapphire Grand Duke, personally conferred the title of Oxtail Marquis, ruling all the land of the Oxtail territory of Ironhoof Island. Let us salute the 7th Marquis of Sapphire." "Congratulations to the Marquis of Oxtail." Everyone responded to the call of the eldest prince and raised their glasses again. "Thank you for your congratulations." Although it had been many days since he was promoted to the Marquis of Oxtail, Lee William was still in high spirits and drank the fresh flower wine in his glass. Immediately, the eldest prince and others drank the fresh flower wine in their glasses. List also drank the fresh flower wine in one gulp. The white wine entered his throat and was plump and mellow. Compared to the first batch of fresh flower wine sold at the beginning, it has improved a lot. Nowadays, flower brewing techniques are becoming increasingly complex, and the quality and variety are constantly improving. It can beat any kind of white wine on the market. However, after all, 2 or 3 great aristocrats such as the Sapphire family are also running the white wine business. Apart from being sold on Golden Island and Red Crab Island, the sales of the other big islands are not high. They can only conquer some aristocrats who really love wine by virtue of their soft taste. One glass was drunk. List was ready to become invisible, eat and drink no matter how others chatted. However, he underestimated the influence of his ghost swordsman inheritance, and the second strongest person in the country. The eldest prince raised his wine glass again and said, "Everyone please raise your glasses with me again. This year's development has allowed Li William to be promoted to the rank of Oxtail Marquis. This is worthy of celebration. In the war, our country has also produced a powerful knight who single-handedly defeated a powerful domain knight." Everyone looked at List. List's expression did not change at all, as if what was said had nothing to do with him. List Tulip, the second son of the Marquis of Oxtail, Viscount of Black Horse Island, 18 years old this year. He personally led the Orders of Chivalry to capture the Coiling Dragon Mountain iron mine. Such a brilliant achievement should be saluted. It's not worth mentioning. List responded calmly and drank the fresh flower wine in his glass. The eldest prince put down his empty glass and laughed. "Well said, List. I look forward to you making more contributions for Sapphire in the future." The other great aristocrats echoed. "He is worthy of being the second strongest person in Sapphire. This calmness is far better than us." The Marquis of Oxtail gave birth to a good son, and the rise of the Tulip family is just around the corner. List has a great future. I really want to see you fight against the Marquis of Wildtau with my own eyes. I have a granddaughter who is as beautiful as a flower, gentle and virtuous. I will introduce her to you later. I believe you young people will have a lot in common." List kept smiling and didn't answer much. He was more focused on eating and drinking. After a round of flattery, these great aristocrats finally stopped surrounding the arrogant and cold List and turned to compliment the Marquis of Oxtail. Chapter 691. This chapter is detached and will be updated with more information. After the banquet, there would usually be some entertainment arranged. The entertainment on Coral Island, in addition to hunting, was to enjoy songs and dances. With the creation of plays by List and the promotion of new drama performers such as Avril Mask, the stage has extended into three forms: opera, dance, and drama. Coupled with the burlesque, drama performances have become more and more abundant, and it has become a favorite amateur activity of Coral Island for the nobles and civilians. These stage plays have rushed out of Coral Island and began to develop to the outer islands, but the scale is not large for the time being. There is no doubt that the Marquis Oxtail arranged several stage performances in the castle hall, which attracted the attention of many nobles. Achi, who was sitting next to List, watched with relish. The dramatic conflict, the skillful turn of events, and the exaggerated performance were all impressive. During the break, List asked Achi, "How was the luncheon?" "Loria is very nice. Penelope is also very nice, but Achi doesn't like those noble ladies. Achi doesn't pay attention to them. They look a little unreal. Nobles are like this, living with a mask of disguise." "Brother, when are we going back? Don't you like Tulip Castle?" "Achi wants to go back to Flower Town. She can go to the Black Horse Island Wizard Tower. I don't feel very comfortable staying here. And Achi is studying the magic of storing clothes, and it has reached a critical time for progress." It was indeed difficult for Achi to adapt to the life of a human noble immediately. List did not want to force a siren to live like a human, so he nodded and said, "Then meet my father and have a chat. I will send you back to Flower Town." Okay. After watching the stage play while the nobles were taking a short break for tea, List found the Marquis Oxtail and said, "Father, if you are not busy, let's have a chat." The Marquis Oxtail ordered the butler Louis to serve the nobles and followed List to the corner of the living room. He first looked at Achi, who was more noble than the noble girls, with a mischievous look in his eyes. He asked, "List, is this the sister you mentioned?" Obviously, like most people, he was also guessing the relationship between Achi and List. List didn't have any special feelings about this kind of gaze. Of course, in his mind, Achi belonged to his private property. Of course, there were some other thoughts in his mind. However, Achi was more like Little Fire Dragon Leo and Big Elf Parker. They belonged to the category of magical creatures. The difference was that Leo had intelligence close to that of a human, but he showed more of a bestial nature. The elves were very human-like, but at least they were slightly lacking. At least all the elves below the great elf level were lacking. Only Achi, as a sea elf, showed the same form and behavior of high intelligence as humans. "Father, let's talk in the study." List pulled Achi and responded. Upon hearing this, the Oxtail Marquis felt uneasy. It felt like something big was about to happen. He couldn't help but take a deep breath. "Why don't we talk in this corner? I need to keep it a secret." "Oh." The Marquis looked at the calm expression of List and then at the expressionless Achi. He felt more and more that something big was about to happen. Resisting the uncomfortable feeling, he said, I'll go greet the eldest prince. Wait for me in the study. A moment later. In the study, List, Achi and the Marquise sat down. The Marquise held a teacup and asked uncomfortably, "What do you want to say to me?" "Father, you must be very curious about Achi's identity. I'm going to reveal a little to you so that you can make arrangements," List said. The Marquise looked at Achi, who was holding a book and reading seriously. She didn't seem to want to participate in the conversation at all. He patiently waited for List to continue. "Achi's identity is very special. Allow me to keep this a secret. But I can tell you, Father, that Achi and I are indeed like siblings. I have no intention of interfering in the affairs of you youngsters." The Marquise heaved a sigh of relief. He thought that List was going to talk about something like marriage. Immediately he was no longer nervous. He leaned back in his chair comfortably, picked up the teacup and took a sip. He was becoming more and more fond of a drink like green tea. It was like life after suffering. This was a charm that no other drink could match. Seeing this, List smiled slightly and said directly, "What I want to say is that Achi is not an ordinary great mage. She is a magic shooter." The Marquise didn't react for a moment. List emphasized his tone. "Yes, Achi is a magic shooter, on par with the Dragon Knight in terms of power." He looked forward to the Marquise's reaction. Instead, the Marquise just frowned. Then he stared at Achi for a few seconds and nodded slowly. "Are you sure that this little girl is the legendary magic shooter that hasn't appeared for many years?" There was doubt and distrust in his eyes, but he didn't seem to be too shocked. His whole person was very calm. Such a reaction was not what List expected. He patted Achi on the shoulder. "Let my father see the power of a magic shooter." Achi closed the night novel that List had given her from the bookshelf and raised her arms slightly without any visible movement. Suddenly, countless water arrows were densely lined up in the study, and then they circled around the study in a uniform motion. Finally, the water arrows converged and formed a huge water sword. The water sword quietly floated in front of the Marquise with its tip facing down. The seemingly tangible light exuded a heart-palpitating magic aura. The Marquise opened his mouth and finally showed the shocked expression that List had expected. But this expression didn't last long before he recovered and looked at Achi in amazement. Such powerful magic control, such vivid magic effects. Although I don't know what kind of existence a magic shooter is, it's not something that a great mage can do. That's natural. Father, I am the Dragon Knight, and Achi is a magic shooter. You can deal with the Grand Duke without worry and wait patiently for the moment I establish my country. I know. Don't worry, I already know what to do. The Marquise nodded solemnly. As for you, you know better than I do what to do, so I won't bother worrying about you. Just go ahead and do it, the glory of the Tulip family rests on your shoulders. In that case, I will send Achi home first. She doesn't like this kind of aristocratic social gathering. The Marquise nodded lightly. Go ahead. After leaving the study, List frowned slightly. The Marquise was indeed shocked, but it was far from what he had imagined. That shouldn't be the case. And magic shooters shouldn't have such a reaction in front of him. He couldn't figure it out. From Chrissy's reaction, it could be seen that the shock of a magic shooter was even greater than that of a Dragon Knight. No matter how powerful the Dragon Knight was, it still existed. Everyone knew that there was a Dragon Knight in the continent's kingdoms. However, magic shooters were already a legend. When a legend became a reality, the shock could be imagined. Forget it, let's not think about it. Suppressing the awkwardness in his heart, List had a servant bring over the chocobo Loki and prepared to send Achi back to the flower town. However, he didn't know that just as he left the study and went downstairs, the ox-tailed Marquis once again spilled the tea in his cup on his clothes. Magic shooter. He made me another magic shooter. This isn't realistic, it can't be true. Illusion. He had no time to pay attention to the spilled tea. He just kept taking deep breaths trying to calm his emotions. However, his heart still couldn't help but race. I knew it. He asked me to come to the study to talk, so he must have some big news for me. I knew it. Chapter 692. Putting down the half-spilled teacup, Oxtail Marquis Lee William Tulip did not immediately leave the study. Instead, he took out a piece of thick bast paper and dipped a quill in ink. First, he wrote down the words Dragon Knight, and then the words Magic Shooter. Looking at the two words, he unconsciously fell into a daze. After a long time, he took out a match and lit the thick bast paper. He watched the thick bast paper turn into ashes in the ashtray on the table. Only then did he let out a long breath, got up and left his study with a smile on his face. He went downstairs and reintegrated into the lively and chatting nobles. It was just that his mentality was different from before. A single dragon knight still had to worry about the mainland kingdom launching a war to slay the dragon. However, with an additional magic shooter as a helper, unless the mainland kingdom sent 2 dragon knight, it would be impossible to win against the combination of dragon knight and magic shooter. As List's father, seeing the relationship between List and Achi, he probably understood that not anyone could pry this corner away. Therefore, once his son founded a country, there would be 2 peak powers, the dragon knight and the magic shooter. It would definitely be more stable than the Grand Duchy of Sapphire at the beginning of its founding, and the Tulip family could also take this opportunity to spread their branches in the new country and continue to pass on their bloodline. The family's glory would reach its peak. Now that everything is ready, it's just a matter of when List plans to establish a country. When Lee William Tulip chatted with these nobles, he felt that he was not only superior but also superior. Even the eldest prince was just a child. Of course, the nobles were good at disguising themselves. He still played his identity as the Oxtail Marquis very well. The guests laughed and the lively atmosphere of Tulip Castle did not stop for a moment. On the other side, after List sent Achi back to Flower Town, Achi did not stop and went directly to Black Horse Island. She wanted to continue to study the magic of clothing storage with Mary and other vampires. After growing her feet, she no longer felt bored. Every day she had endless things to do. Wandering in the sea of knowledge, constantly pursuing the truth, he was full of energy. As for List, after dilly-dallying in the Flower Town to deal with some government affairs and instructing the butler Carter to pay attention to some matters, he prepared to leave the Flower Town and return to Tulip Castle. Tomorrow he was going to follow Meopal to the Red Crab Island to visit Marquis Merlin, whose days were numbered. Wow! Ella flew over and landed on List's shoulder. The thorn sprite was a little unhappy. List held it in his hand and asked, "What's wrong?" "Well, did you have a conflict with the gold thread sprite?" List felt Ella's mood and understood that she was very unhappy with the gold thread sprite. At the mention of the gold thread sprite, Ella suddenly shouted, "Wow!" Her emotions also became excited. List clearly felt the content behind this emotion. It turned out that Ella was very unconvinced with the gold thread sprite. In the previous big melee, although Ella was the first to make a move, the gold thread sprite was not willing to be outdone. She pulled the sprites everywhere to join the melee and successfully took away Ella's limelight. Now the sprites recognized the gold thread sprite and Ella as the bullies of the Nameless Castle. They should not be easily provoked. The status of the Nameless Castle, which should have belonged to Ella alone, was stolen by the gold thread sprite. How could Ella be happy? In particular, the gold thread sprite's fighting strength was not weak and her character was aggressive. Ella felt that she might not be able to do anything to the other party. She was even more unhappy. So she complained to List. However, how could List pay attention to this kind of behavior, so he just comforted and told Ella to sleep well and not to fight. Then he sent Ella back to her separate room, patrolled the worm room and warned every sprite. Feeling that he had suppressed the restless sprites, he left the castle and rode the chocobo Loki to Tulip Castle to continue the communication between the nobles. In the worm room, Ella pushed the lid of the box on top of her head and lay on the edge of the box. A pair of big black eyes on her small head looked at the glass window of the worm room and the swaying apple tree outside the window. No one knew what she was thinking. Now that it was almost autumn, the leaves of many apple trees turned yellow and fell off. A fallen leaf followed the path of the wind and fell on the glass of the window. Ella rushed over in a flash and looked at the leaf on the glass. The leaf was slightly curled and traces of veins could be seen in the yellow. He let out a cry that sounded both curious and happy at the same time. Wow! Riding Loki. Running in the air, every time Loki landed on the ground he would run in the air again. His running speed was far faster than his flying speed. Following the ups and downs of Loki, List suddenly had a feeling of, I am a falling leaf in the wind, watch how I fly. Although he was only riding a chocobo, a big bird that could barely be regarded as an intermediate dragon in World of Warcraft, he was actually riding a dragon in his heart. A dragon knight should ride a dragon. Moreover, he was not an ordinary dragon knight. There were 2 dragon soul fruits in the gem space, which meant that he had 2 dragons, one of which was the invisible dragon and the other was the fairy dragon. If his smoke quest also represented a dragon, he would have 4 dragons. In addition to the fire dragon, which was a powerful elemental dragon, the invisible dragon, the fairy dragon, and the smoke dragon were all holy dragons. If I can find 2 more dragon soul fruits, maybe I can gather 5 holy dragons in the future. At that time I can probably be called a holy dragon knight. The smoke dragon that represented fate, the fairy dragon that represented life, the formless dragon that represented space, the dusk dragon that represented time, and the emerald dragon that represented dreams. Each of the divine dragons represented mystical powers, but I don't know where to find them. List looked forward to the power of fate to guide him. Just like the smoke quest led him to ride the little fire dragon Leo and made the invisible dragon an old friend. Maybe one day the smoke quest would lead the other 3 holy dragons to him. Just like the elves were independent individuals, the dragons were also independent individuals, and they tricked each other. No problem. Touching the 3 space gems hanging on his chest, his thoughts jumped irregularly. There is no need to hide. Later I will ask Alvin to make 3 more mithril rings, inlay the space gems and make a space ring, which will be more convenient to use. The gem space was placed on his chest, and every time he used it he had to reach out and touch it. If he put it directly on his finger he could take out and put in items that will fast and efficient. Chapter 693. On October 26th the weather was fine. The cool breeze swept away the fallen leaves, and the trees around Tulip Castle created a good atmosphere. However, with the blessing of the tulip worm stalk, the tulip garden around the castle was still flourishing and colorful. The noble guests participating in the celebration banquet set off one after another. After seeing off the crown prince and the others, List had Gort and Marcus return to the territory to continue presiding over the work. He was going to take Yevich and Alvin to Red Crab Island, but Yevich did not appear among the ranks of the retainers. Where is Yevich? List slightly frowned. He did not like to wait for people, especially his own followers. The retainer knight Xavier replied, "Sir, the Clearwater swordsman told me last night that he had some personal matters to deal with. If Sir is looking for him, he told me to go directly to the vineyard outside Coral City to find him." Vineyard? He remembered that this manor belonged to Tulip Castle, and there was a grapeworm stalk growing inside. The Tulip family's specialty, crescent wine, was produced in this manor. What is he doing at the vineyard? Xavier hesitated for a moment before saying, "I seem to have seen the Clearwater swordsman go with Sir Ulvera." List suddenly raised his eyebrows. Ulvera and Yevich? He did not continue to think about it and just said lightly, "Go to the vineyard and bring Yevich back." He was not very concerned about Ulvera's life. Although they were blood-related siblings, the relationship between him and his sister was relatively weak. In his memory the relationship between Ulvera and Levis was pretty good. In fact, among all his relatives, the one he admired the most was Marquis Merlin, and the one he was closest to was his cousin Meopel. Next to him was probably Madame Penelope and Lee William. Even his uncle Masiro was more pleasing to the eye than his brother and sister. However, although he was not pleasing to the eye, from a close point of view, Levis and Ulvera were still the closest siblings and a trustworthy family member. If nothing unexpected happened, the family should move to the country he established and continue to live as great nobles. Perhaps he should interfere with his sister Ulvera's criteria for choosing a spouse. Maybe it's just a one-night stand. Isn't that how the life of a noble is? List didn't think too much about it. It wasn't like he hadn't done such things before. After sending someone to call Yevich, he went straight to meet up with his uncle and aunt's family. Uncle Roland Pinecone and Aunt Melinda Longtaro naturally followed. Uncle Roland Pinecone and Aunt Melinda Longtaro. Cousin Russell brought his wife Jackie Broccoli, daughter Rosie, and cousin Raleigh to attend this celebration banquet. On the way back the whole family would gather together and it should be very lively. After a while, Yevich rode his horse and followed the retainer knight. To List's surprise, Ulvera also came with him. After seeing List, Ulvera didn't talk nonsense and directly said, "List, are you going to Red Crab Island to visit Grandpa? Maybe you can keep Yevich, I have a lot to say to him." The meaning of these words was obvious. She had taken a fancy to Yevich. He glanced at Yevich and Ulvera. List's expression didn't change. In essence, he didn't like the slave of 3 surnames Yevich. Although there were objective reasons for wasting his talent when he was young and frequently changing lords when he was young, it was inevitable that people would have a negative view of him because of his frequent changing of lords. He had intended to interfere from the perspective of interests, but after thinking about it, he didn't think it was worth it to destroy other people's love. So he just said to Yevich, "Tell Vera about your future work. You guys discuss the rest, don't report to me. As for today, you stay here and don't follow me to Red Crab Island." Exploring the island was Yevich's future work. Leaving the island for a long time was not a life that could be easily endured. Yevich bowed deeply. I'm sorry, my lord, I've caused you trouble. List waved his hand, mounted the chocobo Loki and turned to Lvera. Maybe father can give you some advice. In any case, I'll send you my blessings. Thank you, List. After the meeting, the Taro family's fleet sailed out of the port. Looking at the palace speedboat braving the wind and waves in the sea, List thought of his previous idea. Uncle, I wonder if I can purchase a palace speedboat from the Long Taro family? I hope to learn some shipbuilding techniques to help develop my territory's shipyard. You're going to research shipbuilding techniques? That's not a simple technique. The Taro family has sent people to research the palace speedboat for many years, but they still haven't figured out how to build it. Masiro said. I'm not copying techniques, I'm just learning from them. My shipyard has its own technical direction. List said proudly. First of all, the powerful effect of rubber glue could replace mortise and tenon construction, reducing a lot of technical barriers. Second, the rapid growth of fast-growing iron thorns could provide a constant supply of raw materials for shipbuilding. Apart from a small number of main keel bones that needed more than 100 years of rock wood and stone wood, the rest could be replaced by thorny iron wood. Third, he had the complete keel-fixing technique. He only lacked dragon bones. Although dragon bones were more expensive, he could buy them if he wanted to. Finally, he had shipbuilding techniques from earth, collision technology, longitudinal sail technology. Once these techniques were combined, he could learn from the palace speedboat technology, coupled with the water and wind pearls, and create a top-class sailboat that could dominate the sea. When that time came, the prelude to the age of navigation would slowly begin. It was not impossible to cross the Devil's Sea. In that case, when you go back, you can drive this palace speedboat back. Thank you, uncle. The price will be the market price for a new ship. It's just an old ship, half price will do. List did not bargain. The Taro family did not lack money, what they lacked was manpower. In the future he would support the Taro family more. With the Dragon Knight as a backer, the Taro family's position in Sapphire should be very stable. Even if it was not stable, if the Taro family was willing to go to his country, they could still enjoy the treatment of a marquis. A day and a half of voyage passed quickly. After walking for more than half a day, the fluttering flag of Long Taro Castle came into view. Because there were few people, there was no courtesy. They went directly to the bedroom to see Marquis Merlin, who was bedridden. Grandfather. List, you're here. Marquis Merlin leaned against the headboard. His face was haggard and yellow. His spirit was not very good and he could die at any time. You wrote to say that you would come, but you never did. I thought I would not be able to see you again, so I was going to scold you in my will. I'm very sorry, grandfather, I was delayed by something. Forget it, it's good that you can come. What about Levis and Lvera? They can't leave. Father has just been promoted to a marquis, and the family is busy taking over Oxtail territory. As for Lvera, she is probably worried about her marriage. That's true. Lee William relied on you to be promoted to a marquis, he must be very proud. Levis can inherit the marquis's estate without any struggle, he must be laughing every day. Has Lvera found a satisfactory partner? This old lady is going to be 22 soon. After the New Year's Day, she will be 22. 22, it's time to find a noble to marry. Otherwise, when she gets old, she can only find an incompetent gigolo. Marquis Merlin chatted endlessly with List about family matters. After a long while. After chatting about family matters, Marquis Merlin looked at List with the eyes of an elder, and suddenly sighed with emotion, so much like Melissa. Melissa's good points and Lee William's good points are all gathered on you. Chapter 694. This chapter is starting from today, and will be updated with a reward of 20,000 coins. When I was young, I fought everywhere and was injured countless times, yet I didn't know how to take care of myself. Only when I was old did I realize how important the body is. Compared to those old Marquis clans, we, the new Marquis clans, still have a long way to go. Marquis Merlin drank a little potion and braced himself. List asked with concern, Grandfather, do you need to rest for a while? No need, I have rested enough by lying in bed all day. I have been looking forward to your arrival because I have a lot of things to discuss with you. I don't know much about your Ghost Blade inheritance, but since you have such formidable strength, it means that your future is bright. The Grand Duke proposed to my father that I be promoted to a Marquis of Ironhoof City, but I don't have any thoughts about the aristocracy of the Blue Blood Alliance, so I refused. The position of Marquis was refused just like that? Yes, he refused. Ah, you have character. Worthy of being my grandson. Marquis Merlin laughed heartily, but soon he began coughing violently. The butler standing by the bed immediately patted his back and massaged his chest, while a servant took a spittoon to collect the phlegm Marquis Merlin coughed up. After coughing, he took a little breath. Marquis Merlin continued, "The aristocracy of the Blue Blood Alliance is indeed unsatisfactory. How can it be as comfortable as the aristocracy of a fief? Your thinking is correct. Moreover, you have the strength. Sooner or later, you will snatch one of the other two fief marquises of Ironhoof Island. Perhaps the territories of you father and son will be next to each other. Perhaps. Thinking about it this way, in the future the Tulip family, your family, the Taro family, and the Golden Wheater family can help each other and become a great power. I'm afraid that the Grand Duke doesn't want the marquises to be too closely involved. The Grand Duke has his own way of thinking and we have our own way of thinking. Getting used to each other is the best way to get along. The potion formula you sent to Meopel, he should already be taking it. I don't know how effective it will be, but I still need your help with the Long Taro family's matters." Regarding Meopel's question, he was quite worried. The aristocratic system did not allow for the adoption of children. Once a noble lost his direct descendant to inherit the title, the fief would be taken back by the lord. Of course, he could also choose his daughter as his heir and let his grandson inherit the title. However, doing so would be no different from handing over the family to someone else. No matter what, the inheritance of the title was always between male heirs. Inheriting it to a daughter would mean the extinction of the family. Marquis Merlin naturally did not wish for the Taro family to perish. "Don't worry, grandfather. I will do my best to help the Taro family. You're a mature child. Sometimes I'm jealous of William Lee for having 3 sons. Although Levis wasn't very useful, he was more than enough to defend his achievements. There was also that Lytton, right? It was said that his talent wasn't bad. The most surprising thing is that your talent is beyond everyone's expectations." List replied modestly, "I just work harder than others, that's all. Whether it's hard work or talent, you've already grown to a height that no one in Sapphire can hope to reach. Defeating a domain knight head-on, I'm afraid this achievement is unprecedented." What Marquis Merlin meant by unprecedented was the level below the Dragon Knight. However, if List were to leave the dragon, his performance would not be much better than that of other knight. Without the dragon, he would probably only reach the level of a perfect Sky Knight. However, there were no ifs in this world. He had the dragon. Starting from the ordinary Sky Knight, he had already trained together with the Fire Dragon, creating a legend that belonged to Sapphire. After confirming that he would help the Taro family, Marquis Merlin and List did not linger on this topic. List began to ask Marquis Merlin about the practice of a perfect Sky Knight. Marquis Merlin, as a veteran perfect, has rich experience and is naturally generous in teaching. They chatted for more than an hour, giving List a deep understanding of the perfect level. The basic material of List's Sky manuscript has been filled in enough and can be completed at any time. Lunch break. After the luncheon, List called out the smoke mission. At this moment, the mission finally changed. Mission completed. Reward: clues to the Wyvern Phoenix. The mission clues were probably in the hands of Marquis Merlin. He was going to ask again in the afternoon. The new mission was also released. Mission: although you no longer care about the sprite worms because of the dragon, the sprite worms are still quietly working to produce materials for the Black Horse Island territory. The value of the rubber worms is growing. The use of the 3-phase power seems to make them addicted. Please use the 3-phase power more often. Reward: a mutant rubber tree. Ha! It turned out to be a mission to reward a new species of plant. I haven't received a similar mission for a long time. The use of the 3-phase power makes the rubber worms addicted. It seems that I have to use the 3-phase power frequently after I go back to train the rubber worm's ability to mutate. He did not use the 3-phase power often, because every time he used it, the rubber worm triplets would be dispirited and looked like they had lost a lot of blood. However, with the guidance of the smoke mission, it showed that the 3-phase power was not only harmless, but also stimulated the rubber worm triplets. Naturally, he had to use it more. But then again, since I transferred my energy to the dragon riders, the elves in the territory have indeed fallen into a state of stagnation. Does this mean that the power of fate represented by the smoke mission is actually limited? After the focus shifted, the influence of other aspects began to weaken? It seemed to make sense. List felt that it was necessary for him to learn how to control his subconscious to guide the smoke mission to release some more practical missions, such as dragon riding. Elves were important, but they were not as valuable as dragons. With dragons he could rob a lot of elves. Give me a fairy dragon. He quickly decided on the dragon he wanted the most and tried to hypnotize himself to look forward to the performance of the smoke mission. In the afternoon, after Marquis Merlin recuperated, Liszt went to his bedroom again. After chatting for a while he began to ask about the phoenix feather. He had written to ask once before, and Marquis Merlin's answer was that it was seized on the battlefield of the Expansion Order, and he did not know its origin. This time Marquis Merlin gave a new answer. Since your letter, I've paid attention and let the family's rats follow the caravan to the continent to inquire about the phoenix feather. They really got a lot of valuable clues from the captive knight's mouth. What clues? Liszt's spirit was lifted, knowing that the reward of the smoke mission had come. Sure enough, Marquis Merlin said, according to the captive knight, his uncle was a mercenary who once accepted a secret mission for a great aristocrat to secretly explore a primitive jungle. They found a big tree that was said to be the habitat of a phoenix and obtained a few phoenix feathers. In the end, because of the uneven distribution of the spoils, or because of a crisis, the mercenary group fell apart. The uncle of the captive knight fled and brought back a phoenix feather. He died soon after giving it to the knight. And because the knight was of the earth attribute, he could not use the phoenix feather and did not dare to take it out easily. This knight knew that his uncle obtained the phoenix feather through dishonorable means. So after being defeated and captured on the battlefield, he gave the phoenix feather to Marquis Merlin as a ransom. Liszt asked, "Grandfather, where is the captive knight on the continent, and where is the forest his uncle explored?" Chapter 695. Remembering the name and identity of the captured knight, Liszt successfully received the reward of the smoke mission and was ready to explore the Fire Mountain in the future. He wanted to find the possible existence of the lesser dragon phoenix. Whether it was slaughtered for meat or tamed as a mount, it was of great value. As for the phoenix being in the Eagle Kingdom, this was not a problem. As a dragon knight and a helper of a magic shooter, Liszt felt that the world was big and he could go anywhere. After all, the dragon knight did not walk the streets. Once he finished hunting the phoenix, he would immediately leave. 100 dragon knight would not be able to catch up. Liszt rested in the Long Taro castle for the night. Liszt said goodbye, "Grandpa, the affairs of the territory are busy, I don't have much time to accompany you. During the New Year's Day, I will sail the sunset after the renovation. The decoration is very luxurious and will not cause any waves in the storm. When the time comes, I will take you to Black Horse Island for the New Year's Day and live in my thorn castle." "Well, I will live until the New Year's Day. Your body will definitely recover. No need to comfort me, I am more open-minded than you young people. You have a lot of things to do, go back quickly." Marquis Merlin was old, but he still had a forthright spirit. After Liszt said goodbye, he did not hold him back and directly urged Liszt to go back as free and easy as when he was young. After saying goodbye to his uncle's family and making an appointment with Meopel to go hunting in Oxtail Ridge, Liszt boarded the palace speedboat named Cancer, and headed for Coral Island. The Cancer was sold to Liszt for 3,000 gold coins for his research. The skilled sailors and captain on board were also sold directly to Liszt. It had to be said that the Taro family was always very generous. 2 days later, in November, the weather gradually cooled. Liszt returned to the Flower Town port and handed over the Cancer to the territorial officials to sail to the Newport dock for research. Then he took the rubber worm triplets and went to Black Horse Island to display the power of the 3 phases. Achi was not in the Flower Town, and he did not know where the rainbow whale Lolth had gone. He could only ride Loki across the sea. Loki had 2 types of wind magic, lighten and levitation. With the help of magic, it could make its body as light as a feather, allowing it to gallop freely across the sea. Moreover, the feeling of running on water was very cool. The only downside was the high risk factor. If he fell into the water or encountered a sea monster, it would be very troublesome. However, the risks were all within a controllable range. Once Loki fell into the water, he would summon the little fire dragon Leo to ride on and then bring Loki back to the shore. In short, riding on the rainbow-colored bird, he sped across the sea. He arrived at Black Horse Port in about an hour and a half, then went straight to the rubber plantation. He took out the rubber worm triplets and released the power of the 3 phases. The magic light continued to flash, and the rubber trees that had been cut were restored to health. "Continue harvesting," Liszt ordered the manager of the rubber plantation after putting away the rubber worm. "Sir Lord, will this hurt the rubber tree and your rubber worms?" "It won't." "Understood, Sir Lord. I will arrange for the serfs to come and harvest the rubber." Leaving the rubber plantation, List looked at the dispirited rubber worms and felt their emotions. He found that they had no other emotions except tiredness. The smoke mission described them as addicted to releasing the power of the three phases, which List really did not notice. In any case, when the rubber worm triplets recovered a little, he would immediately cast it a second time. After nearly 136 smoke missions, he had full trust in the smoke missions. He used to have some ideas of challenging the smoke missions. He felt that if the smoke missions went left, why couldn't he go right? Now that he understood the principles of the smoke missions, he would benefit the most from following the guidance of the smoke missions. Among the countless changes of fate, the smoke missions probably gave the best solution and the clearest path in front of him. Soon she would come to the Wizard Tower. There was no doubt that Achi was not in Flower Town, she was doing experiments in the Wizard Tower. This was indeed the case. Not only did she find Achi, but she also brought good news. Brother, after Achi and Mary's collaborative research, the magic of storing clothes has been cracked. Tell me about it. This is a kind of magic that targets the change between matter and magic power. It stores matter in the form of magic, and after being cast in reverse, the magic will be restored to matter. However, there are requirements for the composition of the material, which must have magic power. It sounds interesting, so in addition to magic, can chi be released? List also had a strong interest in this way of changing clothes at any time. Achi smiled. Yes, the principles of operation are not difficult. With Brother's control of chi, it is easy to learn. At this time, Mary Dawn Daybreak interjected, My lord, Sir Achilles has not named the magic yet, why don't you name it? Brother is very good at naming things. Achi nodded seriously. She agreed with this point. List touched his chin and did not refuse. So what kind of magic does this kind of magic belong to? Mary replied, the applied magic belongs to chaos magic, similar to the druid's nature magic. In the classification of mages, the term neutral magic appeared in ancient records. Chris and other great mages hosted the discussion, and we named these magic as neutral magic. Neutral magic? Not bad. List immediately showed his talent and said, although it involves the storage of items and belongs to a very high application of neutral magic, the original essence of the design of the magic is to facilitate the wearing of clothes, so it is better to call it magic armament, and the release of chi is called combat armament. Magic armament, combat armament. After the naming, whether it was Achi or Mary and the others, they all applauded. It was indeed a good and vivid name. Achi began to explain the technical application of combat armament to List, as well as the details involved in combat armament. Combat armament was not a simple combat technique, but a more systematic combat system, including the selection of equipment materials, the erosion of combat materials, the way to store materials, and so on. World of Warcraft materials are the most suitable materials for magic armament and combat armament. Clothes made with World of Warcraft, because they contain magic power, are easy to fuse with magic in combat, thus completing the combat armament. The process of fusing other materials is time-consuming, and it is easy to destroy the material structure. So my Ice Soul Dragon Slaying Sword can't be stored with combat armament. Brother, the material of the Ice Soul Dragon Slaying Sword is too special, combat armament can't fuse it with combat energy without destroying the material. Then it can't be fused with gemstones either? It will destroy the stable structure of the gemstone. Achi carefully thought about List's equipment. Brother's equipment that can be used with combat armament are mithril armor, red-black tricolor cloak with golden edges, and snakeskin inner armor. The material itself is simple or contains magic power. I understand, then I will start with the snakeskin inner armor. After List finished, he suddenly remembered something. By the way, Achi, I haven't made a few sets of clothes with World of Warcraft materials for you. Perfect, we can make a few sets together so you don't have to worry about wet clothes when you go into the sea. Chapter 696. Magic equipment and chi equipment had many restrictions, but it was undeniable that this was a magic and chi training method with considerable potential for development. Vampires initially relied on magic equipment, so they could carry clothes and weapons with them when they transformed into bats. List immediately decided to make a batch of clothes that could be used with magic equipment and chi equipment. For himself, there was a set of lined clothes, a set of leather armor, and a set of armor. For Achi, there was a set of lined clothes, a set of mage robes and cloaks, and a set of leather armor. As for weapons, List and Achi did not need to use chi equipment to store weapons, they had space rings. In fact, magic equipment and chi equipment were not very useful, at least when living on land. There was no need to use them at all. There was no transformation magic, so there was no need to store clothes at all times. It was only when going to the sea that they needed to use chi equipment. The process of using it was roughly as follows. The clothes were wet, the chi was absorbed, the water was drained, and then the clothes were released, successfully drying the water on the body and the clothes. It was obviously a very high-level method, but in the eyes of Liszt and a chi, it was only used as a drying machine. But no matter what, during these few days, Liszt had been training chi equipment, constantly fusing the clothes and chi. It was somewhat similar to the Dragon Knight resonance, but more concise, and it was easier than treating Paris. When a leather armor was completely fused with chi, with a thought, the leather armor was absorbed into Liszt's body. It's a very strange feeling. It's like there's a special kind of do chi in my meridians. It's completely different from my surging fire attribute dragon do chi. It's very inactive, like a pool of stagnant water. It's even more rigid than the beginner do chi. When he released this chi, it instantly turned into a leather armor on his body. It was released through the skin, so the clothes would appear in the innermost part of the body. If several clothes were to be stacked, the armor should be released first, then the leather armor, and finally the inner lining. Very interesting, but it feels awkward to put it in the body. It's better to put it in the space ring, and when I need to go to the sea I can take it out and wear it. He was busy training his battle chi equipment. Liszt also took the time to complete the practice notes of Liszt's notes from the sky. It just so happened that the white paper workshop, after many improvements, had finally produced white, clean, and tidy paper. It was still a distance away from superior white paper, but it was very close to writing paper. Therefore he immediately ordered the paper makers to use the white paper he named Liszt paper, to bind it into a standard notebook. Then he asked his servant to copy the notes he had written on thick bast paper into a notebook. After checking and filling in the gaps, he mounted it on a beautiful cover. Flipping through the neatly written pages, Liszt was very satisfied with the current white paper. The papermaking industry can definitely support a large amount of revenue. I have a monopoly on the technology. As long as I don't leak it, I believe no one can steal it. The technical content of papermaking was not high, but if one did not poke through this layer of window paper, no one would know how to make white paper. It was the same with glass. To put it bluntly, there was no technical content at all. However, if it wasn't bluntly explained, no one would be able to make glass. His thoughts wandered for a moment before returning to the notebook. The handwritten handwriting is still a bit of an eyesore. I should use the printing method to publish all the works I have created into a book for future generations to admire. He turned the Liszt's notes from the sky to the first blank page. He originally intended to write a preface on this page, but after thinking for a long time, he still could not think of what preface to write. Suddenly, he raised his eyebrows and wrote in a thick font, "I dedicate this book to Marquis Merlin Longtaro. Thank you, grandfather, for your help on my path of cultivation." After writing, he put down the pen in satisfaction. His serpentine calligraphy was getting better and better. I don't know if Marquis Oxtail will have any thoughts when he sees this line of inscription. On the path of Sky Knight cultivation he also provided me with a lot of help. But it doesn't matter. This book was written for him. He should feel satisfied. This is true filial piety. He closed the notebook and handed it to Butler Carter to pack. Pack it tightly and arrange for a messenger knight to send it to Tulip Castle and give it to my father. As you wish, master. After the delivery of the notebook, Liszt did not rest and immediately went to realize his idea. He wanted to build a printing workshop in the territory and explore printing by himself. The development of thick bast paper had long promoted the progress of printing, so he only needed to improve on the basis of existing printing to make printing suitable for his own production of white paper. In this way, papermaking, printing, packaging, and other businesses could all be packaged to form an industrial system. In addition, he also had to organize people to revise and compile the collected books, and strive to create a Siku Quan Shu like Emperor Qianlong. He had even thought of the Siku Quan, fighting, magic, Ji and Shua. Fighting referred to Qi cultivation secrets, including Qi secret books, Qi secret skills, notes, and so on. Magic referred to magic professional books, including casting plans, alchemy experiments, magic theories, and so on. Ji was a variety of chronicles including geography, astronomy, ghosts, customs, legends, history, and so on. Shua referred to literary works, including all kinds of interesting night novels, folk poems, and piano scores. It was not easy to compile such a Siku Quan Shu. But Liszt had a good attitude. If he could find information he would find it. If he couldn't, he would make up as little information as possible. In any case, he was a pioneer in this world. Most importantly, he was training mages to become scholars. In the future, this work could be completely handed over to these magic scholars. He only needed to be like Emperor Qianlong and wait for his name to be passed down for generations. After all, he had more important work to do: to cross the island every half a month, to use the power of the three elements once every 5 days, and to train every day on a dragon. That was basically all Liszt had to do in November. His strength steadily increased. At the end of the month, he used the power of the three elements for the 7th time and repaired the rubber trees in the rubber garden. The rubber worm triplets, who released the power of the three elements at high intensity, were in a good mood and did not complain at all, although they were tossed around every time. He summoned the smoke mission. Mission completed. Sap mutant rubber tree. Well, the mission has been completed, but what is this sap mutant rubber tree? The mutation of the sap should be the mutation of the rubber. Will it produce another kind of rubber with different properties? Liszt looked at the lush rubber garden and dispersed his magic eyes. The rubber tree was a sap mutation, not a magic potion mutation, which meant that no magic potion would be born. At present, in addition to ordinary rubber trees, there were already 2 kinds of mutant rubber, namely fruit rubber and fan rubber. The fruit of fruit rubber was rich in rubber, and it was far easier to pick the fruit than to cut rubber. Fan rubber could also be cut rubber, but its leaves were perfect planks. The soft green fan rubber leaves could be folded into any shape, and then after drying, the rubber inside solidified and quickly became a solid plank. Pots and pans could basically be made from fan rubber leaves, but fan rubber leaves collected in the territory were mostly used to make plate armor worn by night. A fan rubber leaf could be folded many times into a 1,000-layer board. Such a board was not only light but also very strong in defense. In particular, its magic resistance greatly reduced the damage caused by qi, making it an excellent material for night equipment. I'm afraid I won't be able to find a sap mutant rubber tree for the time being. I have to wait for this batch of rubber tree saplings to grow up before I can find out what a sap mutation is. As soon as he had this thought, he suddenly felt one of the triplets of the rubber worm quickly become restless. Without Liszt's guidance, the rubber worm shrank its ordinary cordyceps into a seed and swallowed it. A moment later, it spat out the cordyceps and planted them in place. However, the cordyceps had changed. Thicker and fuller, Liszt seemed to understand something and simply cut a small hole in the trunk of the cordyceps. Suddenly, a large amount of milky white rubber sprayed out from the incision, like a fountain growing on the tree. As the fountain gushed out, the thick, plump trunk also began to slowly shrink, like a balloon deflating. Frightened, Liszt hurriedly reached out and pressed the incision to prevent the fountain from continuing. This is a sap mutation? Rubber trees produce rubber as if they were filled with water. The key is that the cordyceps can also mutate? He was a little confused. Chapter 697. Although Liszt had covered the cut of the rubber tree worm stalk, once he loosened his grip, the rubber would gush out again. If he wrapped the wound with a cloth, the gushing rubber would tear the cloth open and continue to gush out. He could only let the serfs bring buckets and start collecting the rubber. He washed his hands with water. The rubber did not get wet before it solidified and could be washed clean with a little water. When the rubber no longer gushed out from the cut, the serfs had collected 3 barrels of rubber, which were high-quality rubber produced by the worm stalk. The rubber worm stalk did not wither as expected. Its leaves were still green, but they were no longer thick and plump, and the cut was slowly healing. There was no sign of damage to the worm stalk from the restless rubber worm. Could this be how the sap of the rubber tree is collected? Poke a hole and you can directly harvest the rubber? Perhaps this is the case. What should we call this rubber tree? Sap, fountain, let's call it spring rubber. Liszt quickly named it. So far, there were 3 varieties of rubber, fan rubber, and spring rubber under the branches of the rubber tree. Every one of them was very miraculous. One could tell at a glance that the spring rubber was abundant, the fan rubber was a direct end product, and the nut rubber was easy to preserve and transport. Unfortunately, the rubber worm triplets were only sprite worms, so the range of rubber trees they could influence was limited. Otherwise, the rubber tree industry would definitely make huge profits from continuous cultivation. Now they could only rely on fertilization to artificially plant rubber trees and expand the plantation area. Liszt washed his hands and wiped them dry. Liszt left the rubber plantation and went to the wizard tower to look for a qi. He told a qi about the rubber worm stalk's mutation. This should be a very meaningful discovery. Achi, if you have time, you can study it and try to crack the secret of the elves. Okay, Achi will study it seriously. In the month since she promoted to Archwizard, Achi did not have much research results apart from researching magic equipment and chi equipment. She spent most of her time learning about Archwizards and exploring the weave. There were no magic books about Archwizards circulating, and there were no living Archwizards in the vicinity. Therefore, Achi had to explore everything by herself. List could not help much. His own Dragon Knight training method was solved by Achi. Leaving the rubber worm triplets for Achi to study, he left in a hurry to complete the next smoke mission. Mission: the territory is about to enter winter. Most of the plants will stop growing during winter, but this does not mean that winter is a time of silence without hope. Perhaps there is a hidden life around the corner. Please personally inspect all the plantations in the territory. Reward: an unknown number of sprite worms. After a long time, there was finally a new sprite worm birth mission. It's probably because I've shifted my attention back to the elves recently, so the power of fate represented by the smoke mission has begun to rearrange the threads of fate for me. Unfortunately, I hypnotize myself every night before going to bed, and the smoke mission doesn't seem to respond. It doesn't give me a mission about the fairy dragon. Maybe my subconscious is not deep enough? Writing Loki, List inspected the plantations one by one according to the map of Black Horse Island. He cast magic eyes on every plantation and carefully observed the mana retroaction within his field of vision. Now that the territory was big and prosperous, this was not a simple task. Fortunately, Loki was fast and his magic eye was very observant, so he could inspect a large number of plantations every day. The first day was fruitless. The next day there was good news. In the corn plantation, within the influence of the corn sprite Mickey's worm stalk. In the third crop of corn he discovered the mana retroaction light. After confirming that the corn was breeding a sprite worm. This gave him a boost and he continued to inspect with great interest. On the third day there were two pieces of good news. One was that a green tea plant planted by cuttings in the green tea plantation had already bred a sprite worm in the sapling stage. The other was that while patrolling Mangrove Island, he found a small tree sea lotus that was breeding a sprite worm. Sea lotus is a mangrove plant and is very common in the mangrove forest, but it is useless. On the fourth day, all the plantations on Black Horse Island were inspected, and all the plantations in Flower Town were inspected. No more sprite worms were found. The excitement of the first 2 days dissipated and List began to mutter, "Are there only 2 sprite worms?" He called out the smoke mission and found that the mission had not changed, and the content of the smoke serpentines remained the same. It showed that he had not completed the inspection of all the plantations in the territory. How could it be? I have inspected all the plantations and even several affiliated islands have been carefully inspected. Oh yes, there is still one place that has not been inspected. List suddenly remembered that he had only inspected the plantations on land, and the plantations in the sea had not been inspected yet. So he rode the 7-colored whale Lolth and began to inspect the surrounding waters of the territory. Sure enough, a new giant algae sprite worm was found in the giant algae forest. This sprite worm had been bred on its own and was directly contracted by List. In addition, there were no sprite worms or gestating sprite worms. It was just that the smoke mission was still not completed. What is the reason for this? Could it be that there were too many mana retroaction lights during the inspection of the potions? List analyzed carefully, but this could basically be ruled out. His magic eye had evolved after many resonations with Leo's dragon riders. His sensitivity to the mana retroaction light had risen to a higher level. There was a fundamental difference between the mana retroaction light of the potions and the breeding sprite worm, and it would not be ignored by him. In any case, he spent 3 days carefully inspecting it again. But the smoke mission was still not completed. Impossible, it is impossible for the mission not to be completed, or I misunderstood. List carefully looked at the contents of the smoke mission. The mission was to have him personally inspect all the plantations of the territory. Yes. The focus of the mission is on the inspection, not on finding sprite worms. According to the consistent principles of the mission, as long as List completed the inspection of the territory, the smoke mission would directly inform him of the species of all the sprite worms. He did not have to look for them. So, I did not inspect everything? He racked his brains but still could not understand where he had not inspected. The territory was only so big, and the inspection should have been completed long ago. Roar. At this moment, Leo, who was sleeping on his chest, woke up and informed List through the telepathic link that it was time to go to the crater of the Dodo Island to enjoy the fire attribute super magic, Dragon Will, condensed by the volcano. List was suddenly startled and he thought of a possibility. I have not inspected the Dodo Island yet, so the smoke mission must have counted the Dodo Island as my territory. Essentially, the smoke mission was projected according to his subconscious, and whether it was subconscious or subjective, he regarded the Dodo Island as his territory. After thinking clearly, Chapter 698. This chapter is Tang Shi Tianin, Wanzhuanjia. Mission completed. Reward: a hemp vine sprite worm, a human skull sprite worm, a giant algae sprite worm, a sea lotus sprite worm, a green tea sprite worm and a corn sprite worm. After spending a day, Leo completed his cultivation. At the same time, List also finished patrolling the Dodo Island and found 2 sprite worms in the process of gestation. One was a hemp vine sprite worm and the other was a human skull sprite worm, both of which were not far from being born. He took out the packaged fertilizer from the space ring and carefully fertilized the 2 worm stalks. The mission was completed. It took 2 weeks. Although the time was a bit long, the harvest was quite fruitful, with a total of 6 sprite worms. In this season of late autumn and early winter, it was gratifying to be able to harvest 6 sprite worms. And the harvest was obviously not over yet. The new smoke mission was about sprites. Mission: A fallen leaf has given Ella countless inspirations. It is a different little sprite struggling to break the shackles of fate. Although not perfect, it can always touch your heart. It is love and irritation that make it grow. Please let it understand that it is unique. Reward: a mutant variety of thorns. Free point question. List was very calm about this task. Through the spirit contract he could easily make Ella feel this. And in his mind, Ella was indeed unique. This can be seen from the name of Thorn Castle. It just so happens that Thorn Castle has been basically completed. There are only some room decoration work left. I can already move into Thorn Castle. Let Ella be the first to live in the new bug house of Thorn Castle and enjoy a spacious and bright separate room. Back to Black Horse Island. After confirming that Thorn Castle was habitable and would not be disturbed by the remaining construction, List quickly began to move. As a lord, he did not have to worry about the relocation work. Gort organized people to be busy between Flower Town and Black Horse Island. Some basic living materials were left in Flower Town's unnamed castle. Most of the materials were constantly transported to Thorn Castle. List stood in front of the gate of Thorn Castle with his hands behind his back. It would be a lie to say that he was not excited. After all, this would be his new home for the next few years. The main body of Thorn Castle could be divided into 3 parts. The main building, the left wing guard building and the right wing guard building. The 3 parts were connected, but each floor was separated, and a heavy door could be put down at any time to block the passage. 5 floors, 6 meters high and a 10-meter guard spire, a total of 40 meters high. The guard towers on the left and right wings were both 6 stories and 30 meters tall. The left wing had a 5-meter tall water tower, while the right wing had a 5-meter tall central tower. Below the ground there was a basement floor and there was a basement floor below the main building. So, Thorn Castle could be counted as a 9-story building with each floor clearly arranged. 7th floor. Only the top half of the main building's spire was used for security. The 6th floor was the lower half of the main building's guard spire, which was used to store garrison supplies, the water tower of the left guard tower, the bell tower of the right guard tower, and the small garden of stone flowers on the roof, as well as a simple observatory with telescopes. The 5th floor was the main building and the left wing guard building were a cheese laboratory. The right wing guard building was List's indoor training room. The 4th floor was List's and a cheese bedroom, bathroom, study, toilet and other master living rooms. The left wing guard building and the right wing guard building were insect rooms. The 3rd floor was the main building and the left wing guard building were guest rooms, bathroom, toilet and other guest living rooms. The 2nd floor was the main building and the living room. The left wing guard building was the recreation room. The right wing guard building was the conference room, duty room and other administrative rooms. The 1st floor was the main building and the living room. The left wing guard building was the kitchen, boiler room and other servants' workshops. The right wing guard building was the servants' living room. The basement floor was the main building, the left wing guard building, and the right wing guard building were storage rooms. The basement floor was only the main building's underwater insect room, Rose's swimming pool, and the underwater passage, which was directly connected to the sea canal in front of Thorn Castle. Ella stood on List's shoulder and looked curiously at the tall white castle in front of her. She uttered a meaningless cry, "Wow!" Ella, this castle is your and my new home. It is called Thorn Castle. List turned his head to Ella and said, from today on, you and I will live here, understand? Wow. Ella expressed her excitement. You are the first elf to live in Thorn Castle. Even the whole castle is named after you. You know, Ella, you are a unique elf in my heart. Ella was even more excited. Wow. Let's go, I will take you to the insect room to see your new home. Wow. Although the castle claimed to have 9 floors, the main body only had 5 floors and there was no elevator. It was easy to climb the wide stairs to the 4th floor. The left wing guard building and the right wing guard building on the 4th floor were divided into very small compartments. Each compartment was an exclusive insect room for an elf. The room with Ella's nameplate was the first one near the passage of the main building. Let's enjoy our new home. List opened the door of the compartment. Ella rushed in and flew around the compartment. The area of the compartment was about 25 square meters, which was not small. In addition to the jade box, there were many small toys, mostly wood carvings. They were thrown and smashed randomly for the elves to relieve their boredom. Ella unceremoniously grabbed a wood carving sprite worm and threw it to the ground. Wow! It excitedly circled around, satisfied with its new home. When it was tired, it returned to List's shoulder. List then confessed again, Ella, do you like your new home? I live next door to you. You have to remember that my favorite elf is you, because you are the unique elf. Wow. Very well, you must remember it. Wow. After settling the excited Ella, List immediately called out the smoke mission and found that the mission had changed. Mission completed. Reward, auxiliary potion of a variant variety of thorns. Auxiliary potion? List first thought of the most important potion in the territory, the Black Nightshade Auxiliary. The Black Nightshade Auxiliary alone was close to no effect, but when used with other potions, it could produce several times the effect. It could be said to be invaluable except for the slightly low yield, because there were only 2 Black Nightshade sprites. I didn't expect thorns to be an auxiliary potion. Good, very good. List understood the value of the auxiliary potion. This was equivalent to doubling the effect of the territory potion. With the thorns output that Ella could influence, as long as most of the thorns were planted, it would be enough for all the potions in the territory to be used together. At that time, List could be more generous with potions and he and Leo would practice faster. With Leo's digestive power, even if he ate a ton of potions, it was estimated that he could still withstand it. Ah, you are indeed my unique little elf. Ella, this credit goes to your head. Chapter 699. According to the practice of Black Nightshade and Black Nightshade, the mutated thorns were called auxiliary thorns, and the magic potion made from it was called auxiliary thorns. List quickly decided that more than 90% of the areas under the influence of the thorns worm's worm stock would be planted with auxiliary thorns. The remaining 10% would be planted with fast-growing magic thorns and fast-growing fire thorns. Using auxiliary thorns to complement the giant seaweed magic potion would be the main potion in the territory in the future. Currently there were 8 types of magic potion plants in the territory: Black Tulip, fast-growing magic thorns, auxiliary Black Nightshade, giant seaweed, fast-growing fire thorns, 100 parts erect, coptis, and auxiliary thorns. There were 7 types of magic potion plants: Flame Mushroom, Snow Flame Mushroom, Blue Pine Mushroom, Black Truffle, Golden Thread, Monkey Head Mushroom, and Horsebutt. It could be said that the magic potion industry was very prosperous and far exceeded the output of many counts and nobles, but there were still not enough magic potions. List and Leo's daily consumption was a bottomless pit. Even if they had less magic potions, they would still be able to consume them in one day. However, the territory still had orders of chivalry to support. Although the elite Earth Knight didn't count on them to break through by consuming magic potions, he still had to distribute some magic potions frequently to ensure that their warrior energy didn't decline. The genius Emily had already become an elite Earth Knight, and in order to train her, he consumed a lot of magic potions every day. As a sword saint, Yevich Waterpeanut didn't have any private property to support himself, so he needed to provide magic potions frequently to ensure that his warrior energy didn't decline. Being a feudal lord didn't mean that he could enjoy all the power. He also had the obligation to pay for it. The knights who followed him were equivalent to the henchmen of the active social organization. If the henchmen were obedient, the boss would definitely give them benefits. Otherwise, how could the henchmen be loyal to him? Of course, List hadn't encountered such a situation where his henchmen were clamoring. List's 2 expansion orders and 1 encirclement campaign on Iron Hoof Island had been very fruitful, and his knight subordinates had benefited greatly from it. Now, most of the unowned Knight Sapphire wanted to follow List, including the second sons of the big nobles. Because following List meant gold coins and a noble title. With his strength, he would at least need to become a marquis in the future to match his status. One could imagine how much military service he would have to earn in the process of becoming a marquis. In short, the birth of the auxiliary thorns was a good thing, but the demand for the magic potion was endless. The territory still needed to develop and accumulate resources in order to support List's plan to raise dragons to build a kingdom. Speaking of which, he was not really raising dragons yet. The fire dragon was an elemental dragon, and it could grow by relying on volcanoes. If it was a sacred dragon like the invisible dragon, he didn't know how to raise it, but he certainly couldn't find a volcano to casually throw it away and let it grow. I can only say that raising a fire dragon is a good thing for me now. The volcano on Dodo Island can solve most of Leo's needs for me. To raise a gemstone dragon or a metal dragon, I'm afraid that in addition to providing flesh and blood, you also need to provide a lot of other resources. The invisible dragon can also be regarded as a gemstone dragon. His thoughts were a little jumpy. Somehow he jumped from the auxiliary thorns to raising dragons. List pulled back his thoughts in time and returned to the new content of the smoke mission. The arrival of winter snow means that everything in the territory will enter a dormant state for 2 months, and production and life will be greatly affected. However, all these effects are not as great as the impact of the lurking crisis. Perhaps you need to be prepared to deal with it and make up your mind to choose a side. Reward, unknown reward. Lurking crisis? Choose a side? Unknown reward. List's eyes narrowed thoughtfully. Not counting the reward of this mission, he had already received 5 unknown rewards, all after the New Year's festival and after the war. The unknown reward of the first New Year's festival was the Spirit of the Sea, Siren Chi. The unknown reward of the Battle of Iron Hoof Island was the recovery of dragon bones. The unknown reward of the first expansion order was the rebirth of Chi, promotion to Sky Knight. The unknown reward of the second New Year's festival was the little fire dragon in the form of a fire seed. The unknown reward of the second expansion order was 3 enigmatic dragon fruit. It could be seen that every unknown reward was very generous. However, this time it was not the New Year's festival nor was it a war. It was just an ordinary daily mission, but the reward was unknown. This really made List puzzled. Maybe it's because the content of the mission is more terrifying? The content of the mission was not clear, but the lurking crisis and the choice of position all indicated that this would be a major conflict. What does it mean? He instinctively felt that it might be about the Grand Duke because the content involved positions. Could it be that the Grand Duke knows that I have a dragon, so he is forcing me to choose whether to take the initiative to hand over the dragon or wait for him to take it? But what exactly does the lurking crisis represent? Is it the remnants of the goat assembly? In Sapphire, apart from the Grand Duke who was likely to become the Lord of the Dragon Domain, only the few great magicians of the goat assembly could threaten him. After all, the other party had seriously injured an adult sapphire dragon and had the strength to slay a dragon. It was a threat. But if I analyze it carefully, whether it is the Grand Duke or the goat assembly, can they resist the strength of a chi in me? It was not that he was arrogant, but it was the truth. The Dragon Knight and the magic shooter joined forces. Not to mention this island, even if they galloped to the mainland there would not be much threat. No country would be stupid enough to attack the Dragon Knight and the magic shooter. It would be a lose-lose situation. After denying that the Grand Duke and the Goat Assembly were a lurking threat, he immediately thought that the threat might not originate from within the country. It may also originate from abroad. The Eagle Kingdom is most likely. Maybe the threat referred to by the Smoke Mission is the Battle of the Dragon Slayer. But what about the choice of position? He did not think that this choice of position allowed him to choose to surrender or fight in the Battle of the Dragon Slayer. Forget it, Achi and I have to be careful. If there is any sign of trouble, we will immediately jump into the sea to escape. We will then plan the second step. The identity of the Dragon Knight and the magic shooter gave him strong confidence. The ability to survive in the sea was an excellent escape skill. So, no matter how alarmist the Smoke Mission sounded, he was not afraid. He got rid of the shadow of the Smoke Mission. He continued to invest in the construction of the territory. The birth of the Thorn Potion made him suddenly more concerned about the potion, and he thought of another opportunity to strengthen the potion. I have previously mastered 2 kinds of abandoned cordyceps, the flame mushroom and the snow flame mushroom. Although they come from the same source, there are some differences in nature. I don't know if the restrictions of the weave will be shared. Winter was coming and the snow flame mushroom could already be planted. He needed to measure the effect of planting the snow flame mushroom and whether it would affect the flame mushroom and cause the quality of the two abandoned cordyceps to decline. If the restrictions of the weave would not be shared, then the snow flame mushroom could be used to continue trading for new abandoned cordyceps. He only needed to talk about this kind of work, and then he could pass it on to Crazy Truth for research. He worshipped so many mages and great mages, not only to let them refine potions, make a few calming water, calming wind, and calming temperature beads, or make a few ordinary magic equipment. Anything that involved magic could be handed over to Chris to arrange. Lord Viscount, please rest assured that I will send someone to follow up the planting of the snow flame mushroom and strictly control the quality of the flame mushroom. Well, I am very relieved that you are doing things, List said faintly. In the past, when he faced female subordinates, he would habitually show a charming smile to increase his personal charm. However, since a Chi appeared, Crazy had wholeheartedly followed a Chi to study magic. She was a little perfunctory towards this extremely handsome lord. So he was too lazy to maintain a charming smile anymore. If there was anything, he would just say it. Anyway, with a Chi's powerful aura of attraction, mages would only treat Black Horse Island as a holy land. After Chris left, he called for Mary Dawnbreaker. My lord, what can I do for you? I have a faint feeling of discomfort recently, as if someone is secretly spying on Black Horse Island or other places. Send blood servants to the various islands of Sapphire to explore for news, especially news of Ironhoof Island. It would be better if there is news from abroad. Chapter 700. After sending blood servants to inquire about the news, List spent the next 2 days busy with the relocation of the castle. All the sprites were transferred to the Thorn Castle and lived in the new insectoid houses. The sprite worms did not have much to say. They crawled peacefully wherever they were placed. Due to their low IQ, they did not show any special behavior. The sprites were more noisy. A quiet sprite like the corn sprite Mickey, as long as it was given a handful of corn kernels, it could stay in the house and slowly count the corn kernels for a long time. List would occasionally ask Mickey how many corn kernels it had, and Mickey would show a blank expression. Sorry, it didn't know how to count. Nami, the mangrove sprite who was busy working all day, was also assigned an insectoid house. A Chi personally arranged the room for her. After all, she was a Chi's contracted sprite. Nami did not feel much about the new room, but the small cupboard was filled with peanut nougat, indicating that she was very excited. After eating a peanut nougat, she let a Chi take it back to Mangrove Island to continue taking care of her ducklings instead of staying overnight in the insectoid house. As for Nami, List always felt that her personality was greatly influenced by a Chi. They were both relatively independent personalities. Although Nami showed the temperament of a big sister sprite, she still liked to be alone outside and was not clingy. Wheat, sisal, pea green, corn, apple, turning white grass, squirrel and tobacco, these sprites all lived in the room and did not make any noise. The 2 water peanut sprites contracted by Yevich were even more quiet. Without the care of their master, they really looked a little pitiful. Therefore, List generously let Yevich come to the castle, comforted the 2 sprites, and then sent Yevich to the dock. In the organization of the expedition fleet, in addition to being familiar with the water, Yevich also had to learn nautical knowledge and familiarize himself with the structure of the ship, so that he could face danger on the sea. The settlement of these sprites was smooth. However, after the gold thread sprites moved into the insectoid house, it inevitably caused a disturbance, mainly because Ella was very unhappy to see that the gold thread sprites also had a beautiful insectoid house of their own. The 2 sprites, separated by the aisle, shouted "Whoa" and "Hurrah," quarreled for a long time. In the end, List used his divine flicking finger on his head, and he obediently returned to the jade box to sleep. After settling down the terrestrial sprites, the aquatic sprites were also quickly settled down. The sprite worms naturally stayed in the pool. The 3 algae fairies also had their own pools, and were happily enjoying the jade powder at the bottom of the pool. It was the kelp sprite Parker who lost his temper. The grade is too low and there isn't enough light. This place isn't comfortable to live in. Although there is water, it isn't flowing water. The handsome Parker couldn't stand such an environment and strongly requested a change of location. This place is pretty good. If you feel depressed, you can swim in the Tonghai Canal along the waterway. The Tonghai Canal is managed by professionals, and there are sluices at the estuary. You won't encounter any danger. List, I thought you understood me. The handsome Parker needs light and freedom. Help me build a castle in the sea. I like underwater castles. Hee hee. That's not a good attitude. A comfortable environment can stimulate the sprite's desire to work. If you build me an underwater castle, I can guarantee that the kelp forest's magic ingredient production will increase by 10%. Although there was something wrong with Parker's brain and his behavior wasn't very reliable, he wasn't lying. If the sprites were willing to work, the crop production could be increased by a large margin. At the very least, in the field of farming, the labor cost could be greatly reduced. For example, Parker could probably sow several acres of kelp with a casual sprinkle of it. Only he couldn't guarantee whether it was magic ingredient kelp or ordinary kelp. Since he couldn't guarantee the type of the magic ingredient, List naturally wouldn't let Parker meddle in the kelp plantation. However, as they were telepathically connected, he could sense Parker's displeasure. Compared to the unpicky kelp sprite, Parker was a kelp sprite that knew how to enjoy life. How about this? I will arrange for the ugly dead fish Virginia to build you a simple undersea castle at the mouth of the Tonghai Canal. You can live there if you like. But don't run around at will. The sea isn't safe. Once you encounter danger, hide in Thorn Castle. Parker grinned, revealing his fangs. Hurry up and find that ugly fish, the handsome Parker can't wait. Virginia Truth had completely adapted to her identity as an ugly dead fish. She usually stayed in the tier staff, and when she had enough rest she would come out to work, dredging the depth and width of the port. Now, not only the Black Horse Port and the new port had become deep water ports, but the Flower Port had also completed the construction of a deep water port. She wandered around the mouth of the Tonghai Canal, preparing to widen the mouth to cooperate with List's development of the Tonghai Canal estuary into a port in the future. After familiarizing herself with the power of the ugly dead fish, after a period of training, she could now stay outside for an hour. She worked for an hour every day and slept for the rest of the time. Don't worry, my lord. Building a small castle underwater is as simple as building a toy castle. As long as you prepare the materials and blueprints, I can build it underwater at any time. Thank you very much. List said politely. He had always been a gentleman to his followers and other types of subordinates. He didn't like to pretend to be profound or put on airs. After the team of architects led by Jemiah rammed Earth built Thorn Castle, they didn't have much work to do, so they could immediately start working on the underwater castle. Rather than a castle, it was more like an underwater villa. It was enough for Parker to live in, and it didn't need to be too luxurious. So, Thorn Castle was officially put into operation. Achi directed the mages to move the experimental equipment to the laboratory on the 5th floor. Butler Carter directed the servants to start decorating every room, trying to reveal luxury and simplicity, in line with List's personal taste. As for List himself, he didn't have much to do. He just put forward some ideas for the layout of the study and bedroom. Then he went out to find a place to continue training with Leo. No matter what the hidden crisis in the smoke mission was, only by becoming stronger could he better deal with these crises. Even if there were thousands of conspiracies, he only chose to do it. Not far from the castle gate, the head of the patrol group, Paris, was patrolling with a group of knight. When List saw it, he signaled the retainer knight to call Paris over. My lord. How is your body recovering? I have completely recovered and I feel better than ever. Paris smiled like a flower. After solving the hidden dangers of the Black Dragon gang, she was finally relieved. Her whole person became excited and there was a little more joy of a young girl. List nodded and said, How about training? Paris's smile was even more brilliant when she heard the words, Light magic can be cast again, but the light and shadow involvement is still a little difficult and may need more attempts. The training of light chi is very fast, and I feel that soon the trainee chi training will be completed, and I can become an Earth Knight. Chapter 701. This chapter is from today onwards. Paris's light swordsman training system was worth following up, but Paris's strength was greatly weakened for the time being. Her training path had just begun and not much could be seen. She was already 21 years old. After the new year, she would be 22 years old. Her body was no longer as young as when she was 17 or 18 years old. Moreover, as a woman she had to experience bloodshed every month. It was difficult to guarantee how high she could go on the path of light swordsman. It was more of a pioneering nature. Just after chatting with Paris, another group of mages came on the road in front of the castle, followed by several carriages. Chris led the team, and when she saw List, she quickly came to greet him. "Viscount, are you going out? I'm going to find a quiet place to train. Are you here to set up a magic array?" "Yes." A magic array could be set up outside the castle. Generally, a magic array used a magic barrier to protect the safety of the castle. The materials needed for this kind of magic array were very precious. Extracting the magic of the materials to condense a barrier was indeed good for defense, but it was not cost-effective. Most castles were not willing to set up a magic array. List encountered this kind of magic array when he was besieging Castle Ironhoof Island. Marquis Bull was obviously a local tycoon. List was not a local tycoon, and his life was actually tight. However, he was not going to set up a magic array similar to the one in Castle Juniper. This magic array was improved by a chi. Its purpose was not to protect the castle, but to protect the laboratory on the 5th floor. When a mage experimented with magic, it was inevitable that they would encounter chaotic magic, and if they were not careful they would explode. Even as a magic shooter, a chi did not dare to be careless. After all, the insect room was downstairs. List would be distressed if the elves were hurt. Therefore, a magic array was needed to protect the laboratory. In fact, when the laboratory was built, the surrounding walls and floors were thickened. The magic of a great mage could not destroy the outer walls of the laboratory. A chi would not complete more powerful and dangerous magic in the laboratory of Thorn Castle. This magic array was more of a double protection. A chi and Chris were in charge of these things, so he did not have to worry about it. After saying goodbye, he left Thorn Castle and went to the wilderness of Black Horse Island. He summoned the little fire dragon Leo and began Dragon Rider resonance. Every time he entered the Dragon Rider mode and used Leo's eyes to observe the world, he would always feel an inconceivable miraculous feeling, as if he gained an additional layer of understanding towards the nature of things. All traces of magic power could not escape the vision of the magic eyes in this situation. He called the state Dragon Eye Track, and included it in the List Dragon Knight training manual as the 7th training method. The path of the dragon's eye didn't focus on cultivation. Instead, it was used to discover the secrets of things and observe the world. It observed the elves' World of Warcraft, gems, magic, and everything else that could be observed. Even a chi had observed it. In the orbit of the dragon's eye, the stationary a chi was just a very condensed blue and white magical humanoid, but when a chi cast her magic, her body suddenly looked like a glowing ball of light. Countless densely packed threads extended out, as if they were extracting high-energy magic from the void. List didn't know if this counted as seeing the magic net, but at least he saw how a chi extracted high-energy magic from the magic net. With the path of the dragon's eye, List could prepare to find all the magic nodes and cause damage to them with a little force. This was an important card of his. No matter how strong the other Dragon Knight was, without the magic eyes to perform the path of the dragon's eye, they would not be able to find such nodes and form weaknesses. Leo. Full Red Sun. Holding the Ice Soul Dragon slaying sword, List rode the little fire dragon Leo and suddenly performed a charged move. The fire-attributed dragon warrior suddenly blasted out like a red sun, exploding in the air in front of it, and the sky was full of burning flames. If there was a Sky Knight in front of him, the aftermath of the explosion would probably tear him apart. But List was not very satisfied. The Ice Soul Dragon slaying sword is indeed very powerful as a great elf soldier, but it is more suitable for a sword battle between two Sky Knights, not a battle on a dragon. List looked at the blue greatsword in his hand and sighed slightly. I need a very very long knight spear, at least 10 meters long, to unleash the strongest attack of the Dragon Knight. If I want to attack more flexibly, I can make it a little shorter, about 7 meters. The knight spear used to ride a dragon could be called a dragon spear. List needed a high-quality dragon spear, but he didn't have the technology to make it. Or rather, the entire Grand Duchy of Sapphire didn't have it. It was very difficult to make a dragon spear that was 7 or 10 meters long, and it couldn't be easily broken or shaken. List estimated that he would have to use indestructible magic metal like orichalcum to create a grip that could barely keep the spear stable. Otherwise, a dragon spear made of wood or ordinary metal would constantly shake during use, thus affecting its use. I wonder if the Dragon Knight cultivated by the kingdom has a dragon spear as a weapon. So, I should snatch one back. For some reason, whenever he didn't have something, his first thought was to go out and snatch it. He had always been a peace-loving person. Without a dragon spear, an ordinary knight spear was useless, so he still used the Ice Soul Dragon slaying sword to practice. Only when it was getting dark did he return to Thorn Castle. Unexpectedly, Mary Dawn Daybreak, who had been sent out not long ago, had returned at some point and was now waiting in the castle. "Sir, there is important news to report to you." "Speak." "Our blood servants found traces of vampires on the coral." "Vampires?" List's expression remained unchanged, but his eyes flickered slightly. "Where did you find them? How did you deal with them? Did they find you?" "At the port of Coral Island." When Hamel went out to sea, he suddenly saw a familiar face. It was his former colleague, Bluto Black Knight, nicknamed Mad Haben. Hamel reported to me, and I immediately arranged for him and USO to monitor Mad Haben together without alerting the enemy. "Are there any other vampires?" "I don't know, but I asked Phoebe to check the taverns and other places near Coral City. I also asked Vansa to start checking the Black Horse Island territory. If there are any vampires, we will lock them firmly. Just monitor them and report to me at any time. Be careful not to be discovered. In addition, send someone to investigate Ironhoof Island." Peggy and Wimbledon went to Ironhoof Island, and Seth went to Blue Dragon Island. "I didn't ask them to return. Be more careful. I will ask Commander Marcus to cooperate closely. I will also inform them at Tulip Castle to prepare for close defense on Coral Island and Black Horse Island." List motioned for Mary to continue monitoring the new vampires while he enjoyed the dinner as usual. But his thoughts flashed. Vampires have come to Coral Island. What does this mean? Does it mean that the Black Knight family is investigating the death of Tubert and Famur? However, it is more likely to be related to Alonso Cassiopeia. The smoke mission indicated that a crisis of great influence was lurking. If it was just a few vampires who dared not expose themselves, it would not be a crisis at all. Moreover, the mission involved the choice of position, so the direction of the spearhead was clear. The lurking crisis was Alonso Cassiopeia, the Bronze Dragon Knight of the Eagle Kingdom, and the owner of the iron mine in Coiling Dragon Mountain. Alonso is definitely behind the Marquis of Bulls and the Gathering of Goats. Now I have robbed Alonso's iron mine and captured 2 of his Sky Knight followers. Chapter 702. Whether he was targeted or not, List was doing his own thing step by step, and he would not panic just because of Alonso's cipher. Everyone was a Dragon Knight, so no one should scare the other. However, it was certain that Mary Dawn and Daybreak arranged for people to closely monitor Mad Haben for 3 days in a row. It was basically certain that only Mad Haben came to Coral Island and pretended to be a merchant to live in Flower Town. Unfortunately, he did not have an ID, and could not go to Black Horse Island. List's territory has long promoted the real name system. All ships traveling between Flower Town and Black Horse Island must have an identity card and a temporary pass issued by the administration office. Temporary passes are only issued to nobles invited by List. Each person has an identity card, which records the basic information of the subject and has special magic runes on it. The authenticity of the identity card can be verified through a kind of magic equipment that detects the nature of the identity card. This was a project completed by Chris's Mage Tower under the guidance of List. The identity card is not difficult. In fact, it is not difficult to fake it. Just decipher the magic runes on the identity card and find the materials to easily make a card. Of course, the identity card is just a simple way to distinguish between subjects and non-subjects. The real distinction still depends on mutual supervision and reporting. Once a suspicious person is mixed in, it is immediately reported to the patrol group. Any successful report can get a certain amount of money, so the subjects attach great importance to this extra income. Many subjects are often seen wandering around their residential areas, looking for strangers. Mad Haben was reported once because of his previous sneaky behavior. Fortunately, he used the identity of a merchant to cover it up. Of course, if he really wanted to go to Black Horse Island, it was very easy. He could just transform into a bat and set off with the ship. Although there is a time limit for transforming into a bat, it is easy to find a cargo hold and stay for a few hours. His purpose should be to investigate Black Horse Island for a long time, so he needs a legitimate identity. Unfortunately, Mad Haben did not know that his every move was being monitored by his peers and regularly reported his whereabouts to List. This guy is dawdling like he's on vacation. Is he really here for me? Looking at the report, it seemed that Mad Haben spent most of his time eating and drinking. Every meal he would eat a lot of food. List was rather suspicious of this guy's professionalism. It was basically a public holiday plus eating and drinking. Continue monitoring. He could only issue such an order, and then ask the vampires sent to Ironhoof Island and Blue Dragon Island if there was any news. The answer was no. The sea route was too far and it was very inconvenient to send messages. He couldn't help but sigh. If only we could dig out the magic array technology from the Moon Empire. Even if we can't teleport people, it would still be good to send some letters. Suddenly, his eyes lit up. Achi has already come into contact with the weave. I've also taught her some superficial knowledge of electromagnetic waves and electrical signals. I wonder if Achi can use the weave to create related magic formations? I don't need to be able to send any physical objects, just some signals will do. Thinking of this, he immediately went upstairs to Achi's laboratory. Achi was immersed in her experiments and Chris and Lucy, the twin magic apprentices, were helping her. Brother. Achi, Chris, I have an idea. Think about it and see if it can be implemented. List immediately explained his idea about the communication magic array. You all know the limitations of the weave of abandoned worm stalks, and you've also studied a lot of information. You should understand that the weave is long range. Abandoned worm stalks were limited by the weave within 1,000,000 square kilometers, and there was a limit to the magic power they could absorb. From this point alone, it could be inferred that the weave was a whole. According to Achi's observation, the weave was both a net and a field. Electromagnetic waves were also a kind of field. Since electromagnetic waves could transmit electromagnetic signals, the weave might be able to transmit magic power signals. Brother, your idea is very imaginative, but it needs a lot of research. Even Achi can't guarantee that she can successfully research the communication magic array. List was open-minded. There are no hard and fast requirements. If I can research it, I'll do it. If not, I'll give up. Achi was calm. She was already immune to List's endless ideas. Chris, on the side, exclaimed, Lord Viscount is indeed worthy of being praised by Sir Achilles Roids as a learned scholar. I admire the breadth of your thinking. The communication magic array is really a creative idea. It's nothing. There are many similar ideas. I just picked out some that can be put to use, List said calmly. He was no longer interested in the slightest bit of flattery. Letting Achi leave the rest of the work in the laboratory to Chris and her apprentice, he pulled Achi out of the castle. Achi, there might be a real dragon knight hiding in the dark to harm me. So, we might encounter a dragon-slaying battle ahead of time. We must be prepared at any time. Achi will protect brother. The little siren clenched her fist and said solemnly, We need to fight side by side. But before that, I must let you familiarize yourself with how to fight. Let's go to Dodo Island and have a good battle practice. Okay. Fighting with Achi had always been List's wish. After all, no matter how much time he spent training alone, it would not be as profound as the experience of actual combat. Achi was a magic shooter and he was a dragon knight. Both represented the pinnacle of power in this world, but both of them had pitiful combat experience. Now that Alonso Copernicus was watching in the dark, List had to quickly adapt himself to the battle between the dragon knight and the magic shooter. He also had to help Achi grow as soon as possible. The beach of Dodo Island. List rode Leo and slowly wandered in the air. There was a 100-meter-tall waterspout on the beach. Achi stood on a white scallop shell, preparing with rapt attention. Are you ready? List asked as he flew Leo past the waterspout. Achi nodded calmly. Ready. Come on, brother. Then let's begin. As soon as List finished speaking, his mind and Leo's quickly merged. His mind and body were synchronized at lightning speed. After a moment, he had already entered Dragon Rider mode. Man and dragon became one, sharing all eyes, ears, mouth, nose, tongue, body, mind, and also the way the chi and magic operated in the body. The dragon's eye opened and the world existed in a different way. He raised the Ice Soul Dragon slaying sword in his hand, and one man and one dragon quickly pounced towards Achi. The dragon's chi surged and the first attack was a powerful move. Scorching Sun Stab. Achi was outlined by magic. Countless blue and white threads appeared around her as if they were glowing. They went straight to the void and continuously absorbed the magic of the weave. In a split second, a magic halo appeared around her body. It was a high-level water magic water wave shield. But when used by a magic shooter, its defensive power was several times stronger. The sea under the shell began to surge. Countless thick magic lines shot out in all directions like rocket launchers. Every shot was aimed at List and Leo. List was activating the dragon's eye. No magic trajectory could escape his eyes. Leo, who was under him, nimbly dodged the countless water cannons. But those water cannons were just a feint. When the water cannons brought up seawater around Leo, Achi stretched out her hand again to cast a spell. All the seawater instantly wrapped around Leo like a snake. It quickly formed a ring and began to tear Leo's body. This was the magic she learned from the undead clownfish water ring tear. Leo was not afraid at all. His dragon's chi turned from surging to boiling. Flames burned on the surface of his body. He quickly broke through the shackles of the water ring tear and approached a chi above the waterspout. Chapter 703. Boom. List's attack hit where a chi was, but a chi took the opportunity to sink into the sea, disappearing from the dragon eye trace. The dragon chi slowly dissipated above the sea and everything returned to normal. Only List was left riding the fire dragon, patrolling the sea. The dragon eye trace was indeed very observant, but it was not good enough to see through things. So when a chi sank into the sea, she successfully left his sight. What is a chi trying to do? She knows that my Dragon Rider mode has a time limit, so she wants to stall for time? That shouldn't be the case. The purpose of combat practice is to hone combat skills. How can she hone without fighting? Besides, I can cancel the Dragon Rider resonance in advance and return to normal. The Dragon Rider resonance was already very proficient. List and Leo could enter Dragon Rider mode at any time, and there was no time limit. But just as he was considering whether or not to cancel the Dragon Rider mode, the sea surged again. Countless huge blades formed by water rose from the sea, forming a net-like formation that slashed towards Leo. The momentum was unparalleled and it was as violent as a storm. Advanced water spell, Blade of Water. List rode on Leo, nimbly controlling the air, and shuttled through the huge blades of water, looking for a chi's figure. Being in the Dragon Rider mode, his reaction and judgment were greatly improved. The Dragon Eye trace also had dynamic vision, and he could clearly see the movement of magic. Suddenly, amidst the huge, rising stream of water, a thick, solid water column rushed up at lightning speed. Advanced water magic, powerful water column. These advanced spells that belonged to great magicians were like the most basic water arrows in a chi's hands. She could casually throw them out, not caring about the magic consumption. And after coming into contact with the magic net, she had a deeper understanding of dynamic magic formations, and her control of magic rose to a higher level. The power and nature of all spells had a qualitative increase. If it was a Sky Knight, even a Domain Knight, facing such a powerful spell, they would not be able to break through. One set of spells would probably be enough to chase after the glory of the Knight. But the target of the spell was the Dragon Knight. Very strong, but not enough to deal with me. List's heart did not waver at all. His eyes constantly scanned the surging sea and locked onto a chi's figure through the trajectory of the magic. A chi's movement speed is very fast, almost reaching the level of blink in the water. This is a bit tricky. If it was a human magic shooter, no matter how proficient he was in water magic, he would not be able to swim in the sea so freely. However, a chi's racial talent was to control water. The sea was her true home ground, and she was almost invincible. Moreover, a chi made good use of her talent by hiding in the sea and relying on magic to ambush List. Strictly speaking, a chi was not a greenhouse flower who only knew how to theorize. She had hunted many sea monsters in the sea. When he was very young, he was able to evade the pursuit of a mid-level sea monster like the six-headed sea serpent king. How could it be said that he had no combat experience? Unfortunately, it's still not enough. Observing the trajectory of the dragon's eyes carefully, List captured a chi's underwater trajectory in a short amount of time. He analyzed each other's positions and routes to find the best place to attack. Then, as one, Leo closed his wings and fell like a weightless rocket, passing through layers of water blades. When he was about to fall into the sea, Leo suddenly spread his wings and flapped them. Meanwhile, List raised the ice dragon slaying sword and sent a chi attack into the sea. The fire element dragon's chi could still burn underwater and accurately hit a chi who was quickly changing her position. When the dragon's chi and the water wave shield came into contact, a violent collision quickly broke out. The collision broke the water wave shield like breaking glass and blasted a chi into the depths of the sea. The moment the water wave shield was broken, a chi had already escaped with the force of the impact. While retreating, she did not forget to raise her hand and release a high-level water magic, water spiral fusion, one after another, blasting the surrounding seawater. Countless magic scattered everywhere, tearing everything in the surroundings into pieces, successfully blocking the Dragon Knight List who was rushing over again. His vision was blocked by the broken waves and he lost track of a chi. With a thought from List, Leo had already spread his wings and flew straight into the sky. And at this moment, among the surging waves on the sea, a thick, solid water column broke through the waves and hit Leo's original position. So, Achi kept releasing magic, but she couldn't hit Leo, or if she hit Leo, she couldn't do much damage. List was able to find opportunities to attack Achi, but because of the obstruction of the sea, his attack power couldn't pose much of a threat to Achi. No one could do anything to the other. About half an hour later, List signaled the end of the actual combat exercise and came to the beach with Achi. Leo flapped his wings and flew to the crater of the Dodo Island to enjoy the fire element supreme demon that he had just condensed. He left List and Achi in the small wooden house by the sea to carefully analyze the gains and losses of the actual combat exercise. Brother, the combat power of a magic shooter is obviously weaker than that of a dragon knight. Achi's magic damage to the dragon knight is too limited. If it wasn't for the help of the sea, she wouldn't be a match for you at all. When the dragon-slaying battle with Alonso Celeste begins, Achi will probably only play a supporting role. What she said was the truth. Through this actual combat exercise, List also clearly felt that the magic shooter's attack seemed violent and might hit a large area, but it didn't mean much to the strong physique of the dragon knight. Even if Leo took a few magic hits, he wouldn't be seriously injured, at most 2 broken bones. But the attack power of the dragon knight could easily tear apart magic and hit the magic shooter directly. If this battle was not at sea but on land, perhaps Achi would be crushed by List after just a few attacks. I also think there is a problem with the combat power of the magic shooter. The magic books have mentioned the means of the ancient magic shooter. If they can fight with a dragon alone, their attack power shouldn't be so weak. It must be a broken inheritance. Achi, you can only master high-level magic, which is magic that a great mage can master. List made his own judgment. The magic shooter should have mastered a higher level of magic, otherwise they wouldn't have left behind such a resounding legend. Achi thinks so too, but there is no clue about a higher level of magic. Maybe studying the soul is a good direction. The mages of the Goat Gathering relied on the study of the soul to heavily injure the Sapphire Dragon. List sighed. After thinking for a moment, making a decision that he didn't know whether he should make, he took out a few magic books about the soul from the space ring and handed them to Achi. These books are books about the soul that I have collected. I originally didn't want you to know about them because the study of the soul is too evil. He hoped that Achi could always maintain her current purity and not become a crazy mage who studied the soul and blasphemed life and death. In the legends, it was said that many of those ancient mages turned into wizards after studying the soul, and even turned themselves into liches. List didn't like wizards and liches. He always felt that it was a blasphemy against life. Perhaps he was actually worried that the mages would harm themselves by relying on the study of the soul. After all, the Sapphire Dragon was a lesson learned. A group of great mages almost slayed the dragon. The lethality of the soul was evident. As if seeing List's worry, Achi solemnly took the book and smiled. Brother, Achi will always be your little siren. Chapter 704. The magic inheritance of magic shooters was incomplete. This was not a problem that could be solved in a day or two. Fortunately, Achi was very young. The old siren, Isis, was more than 400 years old and still lived well. She was only 43 years old. Obviously, she still had a long life ahead of her. However, the most important thing now was to improve their combat power in the dragon-slaying battle. After careful analysis, List said, although you can't improve your combat power in a short time without the inheritance of magic shooters, and you can't pose much of a threat to the Dragon Knight, it's a good choice to support. In the dragon-slaying battle, you'll be in charge of restraining it and I'll fight the Dragon Knight head-on. Yes, Achi understands. Immediately, the two discussed some ways to attack together. If the main battlefield was on the sea, List and Achi fighting side by side would be very terrifying. Achi, who was invincible, could easily dodge the Dragon Knight's attacks and cast water magic at will. If the main battlefield was on land, Achi would need to protect herself and cast water magic to support List. It's best to set the battlefield on the sea. Only then can we maximize our combat power and ensure the result of the dragon-slaying battle. There should be some time. We have to practice more in the future and strive to reach a level of tacit understanding. Yes. List thought there was still time. The hidden danger was only a hidden danger after all. It was not in front of him yet. However, when he and Achi returned to the territory the next day, they immediately received a report from Mary Daybreak. My lord, something big has happened. As she spoke, the pure-blood vampire had a worried expression on her face. What is it? Peggy and Wimbledon have returned from Iron Shoe Island. They found the familiar aura of many vampires on the island, and those vampires also found their aura. According to their judgment, it's very likely that the Black Knight family has sent out their higher-ups, or even all the vampires. The Black Knight family had a total of 54 vampires, including purebloods and mixed bloods. Among them there were 12 purebloods and 42 purebloods. Now that the 2 purebloods, Tubert and Famer, were dead, and Mary and the other 6 half-breeds had sided with List, this meant that the Black Knight family still had 10 purebloods and 35 half-breeds. "Summon Peggy and Wimbledon," List said calmly. After a while, Peggy and Wimbledon arrived and told them what they saw on Iron Hoof Island in detail. Not long after they arrived at Oxhorn City, they sensed the presence of pureblood vampires in the city. The heart of a pureblood can expand its influence on blood magic and detect the location of the hybrid vampire through the feedback of blood magic. However, this is a two-way effect. The hybrid can also sense the location of the pureblood vampire, Mary explained. "So when Peggy and Wimbledon sensed the pureblood, it sensed Peggy and Wimbledon?" "Yes, my lord." "How many purebloods have you sensed?" "We sensed the presence of 3 purebloods in total. 3 half-breeds acting together. This rarely happens in the Black Knight family. Moreover, we sensed 3 presences in Oxhorn City. It is conceivable that there should be purebloods in other cities on Oxhorn Island," Peggy replied. Wimbledon added, "It is also possible that the 3 purebloods wanted to leave Oxhorn City by ship and go to other islands. However, Peggy and I did not dare to stay in Oxhorn City after we were discovered, so we snuck into a large ship heading to the outer islands and hid inside. Only by stopping the blood flow in our bodies could we avoid being targeted by the purebloods." List nodded slightly and asked, "Do you think the Black Knight family is here for Tubert and Famer?" "My lord, it is very likely that the Black Knight family is here for us." List could not deny this. However, he felt that this was not the case. The Black Knight family should know his strength. After all, he was a powerful ancient warrior inheritance that defeated a domain knight. With the strength of the purebloods of the Black Knight family, it would be difficult to gain any advantage from List. After all, this was the Grand Duchy of Sapphire. He ordered, "Pay close attention to Coral Island and Black Horse Island, especially Mary. You have to turn on the influence of blood magic at any time. Once you find any new vampires, report to me immediately. Don't monitor the Mad Haben, just capture him." "As you wish, my lord." The capture of the Mad Haben went smoothly. The hybrid had no chance to escape under the net of Mary and other blood servants. His heart was not in his body. However, he could not resist Mary's interrogation and poured out all he knew. "I did intend to sneak into Black Horse Island to investigate Lord List, but I did not come with malice. Lady Mary, I did not know that you have followed Lord List. Believe me, this is a misunderstanding." Mad Haben felt the pure blood aura of Mary and was surprised. "You did not come with malice, did you come with kindness?" "To be precise, it was a kindness. I originally received the task of contacting several vampires in my family, your previous superior, Lord Tubert. Halfway through, I received an order from my superior, Lord Poseidon, to inspect Black Horse Island. He did not know that Tubert was dead before that. However, seeing that Mary had become a pureblood, he should have guessed it. Of the 2 pureblood vampires killed by List, only Famer and the Dark Knight family, who were stationed at the Trapped Dragon Mountain iron mine, should know that they were killed by him. The Black Knight family had no idea whether Tubert, who had gone to Iron Hoof Island to investigate the goat gathering, was dead or alive. After all, List had captured all the purebloods and mixed bloods in one fell swoop, and no information had been leaked. Mary continued to interrogate, "Lurking in Black Horse Island, is this kindness? You may not know, but the family has never had the idea of avenging Famers, even his sister. I don't know the reason, but I heard that if possible, the Patriarch hopes to make friends with this Lord List." "Make friends?" "Yes, you should have sent someone to monitor me so you can also see that I am not in a hurry to complete the task and have been enjoying the food. Going to Black Horse Island is not a task for me, it's just a trip." What the Mad Haben said seemed to be true. Mary's eyes flashed with a trace of confusion, but it did not prevent her from continuing to interrogate, "So what is the purpose of the Black Knight family?" "Well, I don't know. You know that we are just running errands for many tasks. The secrets are in the hands of the pure blood." "So how many people from the family came?" "Fat Pig Peak and I followed Lord Poseidon here. We are the first batch. I don't know how many people from the family came later." At the end of the interrogation, Mad Haben was imprisoned. Mary hurriedly reported to List. After listening to the report, List frowned. The patriarch of the Black Knight family wants to make friends with me? They know that I killed the pureblood famers, but instead of revenge they want to make friends with me? It sounded like a joke which was not in line with common sense. My lord, Madhaben should not be lying, but he also heard that the patriarch of the Black Knight family wanted to make friends with you. He can't be sure if it's true or not. But why does the patriarch of the Black Knight family want to make friends with me? If I remember correctly, the patriarch is called Rommel Black Knight, a powerful vampire comparable to the top knight. List shook his head and said, but suddenly, a flash of inspiration. The content of the smoke mission this time had a choice of sides. At first, he thought that he would have to face the Grand Duke's coercion to make a choice. Now, it seemed that it had something to do with Alonso Celeste. Could it be that the smoke mission wants me to make a choice between Alonso and the Grand Duke? He thought silently. It seemed that from the beginning, Alonso was an enemy in the Battle of Dragon Slaying because he killed his vampire servant and robbed his iron mine. However, the content that was ignored was that both vampires and iron ore were part of the war, and it was inevitable that there would be losses on the battlefield. For a Dragon Knight, such a loss didn't seem too serious. At the very least, compared to having a top ancient warrior as a follower, such a loss was within an acceptable range. Alonso can't be thinking of recruiting me as a follower, right? Chapter 705. List was puzzled. He didn't know what Alonso Cyclamen was thinking, and he wasn't sure what the hidden crisis meant. Even if Alonso intended to get his hands on Sapphire, what would he rely on to get his hands on Sapphire? The Grand Duchy of Sapphire that had dominated the sea for more than 150 years was not a small country that could be easily bullied. For the time being, no one could provide an answer. In Black Horse Island and Flower Town, only Achi knew of List's identity as a Dragon Knight. However, Achi didn't know much about politics and couldn't give List any advice. Moreover, there was another person on Coral Island who knew his identity. Therefore, the puzzled List was going to have a good chat with the Oxtail Marquis Lee William. However, when he arrived at Tulip Castle, he learned that the Marquis had gone to Ironhoof Island to take over his new fief. Then let Achi take me to Ironhoof Island. Without any hesitation, List let Achi take him to Ironhoof Island. The distance between Coral Island and Ironhoof Island was 4 days sailing, but for Achi, it was only an hour's walk. The Scallop served as a submarine. List and Achi lay down side by side, chatting and resting for a while. After a while, they arrived at Ironhoof Island hundreds of kilometers away. Oxtail City was the main city of Oxtail Territory. It was a large coastal city with a castle that once belonged to the Bull family, Oxtail Castle. The Bull family was very rough in naming. The island was called Ironhoof Island. Because of their fondness for bulls, all the cities were named after the parts of the bull. Horns, hooves, tails, tendons, loins, hair, legs, ribs, etc. Every city had an attached castle. Of course, they were not as majestic as Oxtail Castle and Ironhoof City. These cities and castles that were not given to followers were mainly used as vacation residences for the Bull family. Therefore, Oxtail Castle was even more shabby than Tulip Castle. Of course. Although Oxtail Castle was shabby, in addition to the main city, Oxtail Territory, there were 2 large cities, Oxtail City and Oxtail City, as well as 10 small cities. So the Tulip family had acquired 3 named castles, and 10 castles of different sizes attached to the cities. At this moment, the red tulip flag on Oxtail Castle signified that this place belonged to the Tulip family. The guards in Oxtail Castle were very lax. It was not until List brought Achi to the gate that a pair of patrolling knight discovered them. Seeing that it was List, the knight hurriedly came forward and saluted before welcoming the two into the castle. The butler, Silva, hurried over and said in fear and trepidation, "I am very sorry, young Master List, Miss Acaroids, we did not know that you would be coming today, so the castle is in a mess and has not been properly tidied up. We did not even arrange for a servant to guard the door, we have truly neglected you. Where's my father?" List didn't care about these details. Master and Madam went to Oxtail City to inspect the relocation of the workshops and shops. "Young Master and young Miss, please wait for a moment. I will send servants to Oxtail City to look for Master." Okay. List nodded and took Achi around Oxtail Castle, looking at the castle. It was the first time he came to Oxtail City and the first time he saw Oxtail Castle. Speaking of which, it was a bit indifferent. Achi had mastered the technology of fast navigation, but he did not think of coming to Oxtail Castle. Probably subconsciously, he did not regard the place outside Black Horse Island as his own territory. After 3 or 5 years of dormancy, he would go overseas to build a country. Everything here would not have much to do with him, so he was too lazy to put in any effort. Just as he looked around Oxtail Castle, the Marquis had returned to Oxtail Castle. "List Achi, when did you come? Why didn't you say hello in advance?" "I had a sudden idea to discuss something with you, father, so I came," List replied. Madame Marie smiled and said, "Go to the study and talk, I will prepare lunch for you." Generally, when it came to matters involving List and his son, she would consciously not be an eyesore and find an excuse to leave. The study was well furnished. The Marquis had gotten a large number of new books from somewhere and filled the bookshelves. List had never read these new books, so his hands were itchy. He wanted to take a knife and cut the cover to see if he could find more fighting techniques. Of course. He held back, motioned for Achi to freely look through, and directly talked to the Marquis. "My blood servant found a large number of Black Knight family vampires sneaking into Ironhoof Island. It seems that they came with bad intentions." "Vampires sneaking in?" The Marquis frowned. "What is their purpose?" "I don't know, but they are not coming for me. They not only did not intend to retaliate when I killed the pure blood, even the patriarch of the Black Knight family, Rommel, wanted to make friends with me. I suspect that the purpose of the Black Knight family's action this time was under Alonso's instructions." "It is possible. Famur died because of the expansion order. This is a war between countries. And I have sent 2 letters asking for the ransom of the Sky Knight, but there has been no reply from Alonso's side. This is not normal. Indeed, although Garcia and Fox are only ordinary Sky Knights, they are still young and have the possibility of advancing to Sword Saint. There is no reason to give them up so easily." After listening to List's introduction, the Marquis fell into deep thought. It is indeed logical to say that Alonso is prepared to recruit you. But what confidence does he have that I will give up my position in Sapphire and follow him? Even if he is a Dragon Knight, he is only a Marquis. If Alonso was a duke and founded an independent country, he would be qualified to recruit List. But he was only a Dragon Knight trained by the Eagle Kingdom. If he died, he would have to return the dragon back. He was not qualified to recruit a powerful ancient warrior inheritance like List. Could he give List a position in Sapphire? The Grand Duke was prepared to use the title of Marquis to rope him in. As long as he nodded, the Marquis of Ironhoof Island would be in his pocket. As a Bronze Dragon Knight, Alonso Cyclamen sounded very strong, but his title was just a Marquis plus the Count of Lianshan. Since the Black Knight family did not come for you and Alonso showed signs of recruiting you, does it mean that his target is Sapphire? I suspected so, but what does he have to conquer Sapphire? The Battle of Dragon Slaying? The Marquis said. Ever since List rode a dragon, he had been thinking about the Battle of Dragon Slaying for a long time. Is it possible that Alonso is preparing to fight the Grand Duke? Coming overseas alone on a horse, isn't he afraid of being left behind? Even if the Dragon Knight family is strong, it would be easy for the Sapphire family to escape. It would not be difficult for them to avoid the attack and stage a comeback. What if he is not alone, but with a large number of orders of chivalry? The Marquis suddenly thought, back then you said that the descendants of Marquis Bull had sought refuge with the mainland kingdom, and speculated that Alonso was the backer behind Marquis Bull. Then, with the foundation of the Bull family, it is completely possible for them to help the Eagle Kingdom build a fleet. This, List wanted to refute. He had always felt that being alone overseas was very safe. However, what the Marquis said was not without reason. Ever since Marquis Bull defected, shipbuilding technology was no longer exclusive to Sapphire. The Bull family had been preparing to slay the dragon for a long time. This showed that they had long sought refuge with the Eagle Kingdom. After so many years, the Eagle Kingdom had been crazily accumulating ships and training sailors. It was enough to accumulate a large fleet, thousands of ships. As if to confirm the Marquis' guess. After the lunch, a knight riding on World of Warcraft Eagle descended from the sky and landed in Oxtail Castle. He was the Knight of Orders of Chivalry, a direct subordinate of the Grand Duke. This knight came from Oxfoot City and currently belonged to the Marquis of Quicksand City, Nesta Greatflower Huilan, who was stationed in Oxfoot City. He brought explosive news. Chapter 706. It's just as I expected. When the messenger knight Ma Grey Eagle left, the Marquis' face suddenly darkened. He looked up at the dark sky outside the window at a 45-degree angle. It was already December and the winter snow was coming soon. The temperature was dropping day by day. He put his hands behind his back. He was not shaken by the news. On the contrary, he was vaguely gratified. He had regained the dignity of his father's generation. As the saying goes, old ginger is spicier. What List did not guess had become a prophecy. This was experience, this was Jianghu, and this was why he was able to establish the Tulip family. The Marquis turned his head and looked at List with eyes that seemed to flash with the self-confidence of, "Your father will always be your father." The Eagle Kingdom has been ambitious for Sapphire for a long time, and it's finally time to explode. I just don't know if the invader that came with the fleet is Alonso. Alonso is a sure thing. List did not look at the Marquis, nor did he show any admiration. From the beginning of Marquis Bull's rebellion, he has been involved in this plan. There is no doubt that he will be the leader of this war. How will the Grand Duke deal with it? You can see the whole picture by looking at a spot. When the Eagle Kingdom's fleet revealed its tracks, many clues were put together and formed a clearer picture in List's mind than Lee Williams. Many years ago, the royal family of the Eagle Kingdom, who had suffered from the harassment of Sapphire, decided to get rid of this small overseas barbaric country once and for all. However, Sapphire's geographical location was very special. It was separated by layers of the sea and could not be occupied. As for the dragon-slaying war, before Sapphire was founded, the dragon-slaying war did not succeed, and it would not succeed in the future. Especially on the sea, with the protection of the Iron and Steel Ridge Kingdom, the Dragon Knight of the Eagle Kingdom did not dare to make a move. The Dragon Knight could not guarantee a complete victory against the dragon. So, the Eagle Kingdom contacted the Bull family, and even the Magic Goat family had the Eagle Kingdom behind them. In short, the Bull family was attracted by the Lich plan. By the generation of Marquis Bull, it was likely that they had a deep involvement with the Eagle Kingdom. They were preparing to slay the dragon and transform it into a lich, while helping the Eagle Kingdom build ships. Alonso was the executor of the plan. However, the matter of slaying the dragon was not completed yet. The Sapphire Dragon did not die, and the Grand Duke even made a flashy appearance to capture Marquis Bull. Hence, Alonso did not dare to act rashly. Thus, he sent vampires to Ironhoof Island to search for the missing Great Magician of Goat Gathering to ascertain the situation of the Grand Duke. Until today. He probably knew about the Grand Duke's situation, or that the Orders of Chivalry were enough to capture Sapphire Stone, or that the Dragon Knight of Iron and Steel Ridge was involved in something. In short, Alonso had begun his invasion of Sapphire, and the problem brought by List was only a small problem. Garcia and Fox were captives, so there was no need to pay ransom. As long as they conquered Sapphire, there would be no more problems with captives. As for the Black Knight family, it was probably because Alonso had shown his appreciation for List that Rommel had given up on revenge and wanted to make friends with List. Hence, the Smoke Mission issued a mission to hide in danger and choose a side. What do you think? The Marquis was a little unhappy. He did not see the admiration in List's eyes. Instead, he put on a nonchalant look. It was as if he had guessed that the Eagle Kingdom was attacking him. List really thought so. He ignored the Marquis's previous guess and summarized all the clues to form a clear picture. Everything was under control. What I think is not important. What is important is how the Grand Duke will react. I think we can feign civility with how Marquis Nesta expects us to gather the Orders of Chivalry to guard Ironhoof Island. Not take the initiative? Oh. The Marquis said, "You will have to build a country sooner or later, but a duchy will not have the support of a kingdom. It will be difficult to develop steadily. In case of a more dangerous dragon-slaying war, the situation will be unpredictable. You are a Dragon Knight and Chi is a magic shooter. Actually, you can choose to rely on the Eagle Kingdom or the Iron and Steel Ridge Kingdom." What about the Grand Duke? Sigh. The Marquis sighed. The Grand Princess and I are master and servant. The Grand Duke has not mistreated me, but the crisis of Sapphire is not decided by me. As a Marquis, I hope to take on the obligation of a follower for the Sapphire family as much as possible. But today it is no longer an ordinary knight who can decide the war. The Marquis could not decide the war. Once the Orders of Chivalry of the Eagle Kingdom swarmed Sapphire, then Sapphire's Orders of Chivalry would no longer have the advantage of the sea. Moreover, the Marquis knew very well why he could be promoted to Marquis. It was because of his son's strong play. But List could. He gradually understood what the so-called choice was. To be honest, father, I don't like to rely on others. Whether it is the Eagle Kingdom or the Iron and Steel Ridge Kingdom, it is not worth it for me to rely on. If I build a country, I even want to directly name it a kingdom and be my own king. The Marquis looked at List speechlessly. List, the kingdom must have at least 2 dragons. List's face was expressionless. I know. Seeing this, the Marquis no longer cared about the kingdom or the duchy. Instead, he said, listening to you, you want to help the Grand Duke when necessary? I am not a person who likes to change. At present, I like the position of the Grand Duchy of Sapphire very much. If I can maintain this state, it is very suitable for me to lay dormant here and develop slowly, but it still depends on the situation of the war. Perhaps when the Grand Duke and Alonso are both injured, it will be the best time for me to appear. The smoke mission gave him a choice of position, but it was not fixed whether he wanted to help the Sapphire Grand Duke or rely on the Eagle Kingdom. Therefore, List could have a third choice: the Sandpiper and the Clam fight and the fishermen profit from it. While the Grand Duke and Alonso were both injured, he could take Sapphire for himself. The benefits of going to the greatest extent. Don't be overconfident. You are still young and can fight steadily. I understand, father. Now that the Eagle Kingdom is invading, Ironhoof Island will soon become the place of the decisive battle. You should be careful here. I will first return to the territory with a chi and organize orders of chivalry to go to Oxtail territory to support. At that time, we will see how the war develops and how the major guilds respond. There was no delay. List directly asked the chi to send him back, make some preparations, inform the Tulip family of the news, and organize Coral Island orders of chivalry and Black Horse Island orders of chivalry to prepare for the expedition. Then, together with a chi, he returned to Oxtail territory again, waiting for the arrival of the war. This wait lasted for 3 days. When the eldest prince led a large number of blue blood orders of chivalry to Oxtail City, the Sapphire speedboats scattered on the sea finally found the fleet of the Eagle Kingdom. There were at least thousands of 2-masted sailboats and sporadically distributed 3-masted sailboats. When the news reached Oxtail City, the eldest prince immediately convened a meeting. Including List, more than 30 marquises, earls and other nobles were on standby, waiting for further instructions from the eldest prince. The eldest prince, with a serious expression, glanced at the audience and slowly said, "My father, the Sapphire Grand Duke, has arrived on the Sapphire Dragon. This is a major crisis concerning the safety of the Sapphire territory, but do not be nervous. The sea is Sapphire's horse farm. The invaders of the Eagle Kingdom are destined to drown in the Blue Sea. Eldest Prince, what should we do?" Chapter 707. When the ship set off from the port of Oxfood Island, List understood that war was inevitable. Moreover, naval battles were cruel. For the night, the narrow space of the ship was not enough for them to charge. All they could do was to shoot at each other from a distance or jump around to engage in naval battles. List took a chi on the main ship of the Tulip family, the Tulip. He did not choose to fight but just watched the battle spread on the sea. After deciding to sit back and reap the benefits, the war was like a movie to him. All he needed to do was to buy a ticket and find a seat. We have the advantage in naval battles. The Knight of Sapphire has dealt with pirates many times. Their experience in naval battles is not comparable to that of the Knight of Eagle, who has been trained for a short period of time. After all, they have not experienced the baptism of the sea and do not know how to control the waves. Lee Williams stood at the bow of the ship, holding a telescope to survey the overall situation of the naval battle. The Dragon Knight did not appear on the battlefield, so it was just a naval battle between ordinary knights. Sapphire's orders of chivalry and fleet were still coming. At present there were not many fleets. The Eagle Kingdom could be said to have turned out in full force. Countless sailboats covered the entire sea. However, their ships were obviously slow and stiff, especially in front of the large number of fast sailboats of Sapphire. They looked even more clumsy. The 2 fast sailboats approached each other from the left and right. In an instant, a large group of knights jumped from their respective decks and began to engage in naval battles. 2 against 1, easily destroying one Eagle Kingdom sailboat. Then the fast sailboat of Sapphire quickly left and rushed to the next Eagle Kingdom sailboat. The fleets of the 2 kingdoms had destroyed dozens of sailboats in just a short encounter, 70% of which belonged to the Eagle Kingdom. The huge gap in strength in naval battles was not only reflected in the ships, but also in the knight. The shaking deck had no effect on the Knight of Sapphire, but for the Knight of Eagle Kingdom, it was unbearable. Their fighting skills were deformed, their bodies were unstable, and their combat power was directly reduced by 30% to 40%. How could they fight against the agile Sapphire Knight? Therefore, even if the number of Sapphire ships was small, their combat effectiveness was far greater than that of the Eagle Kingdom. All of this was seen clearly by List through his binoculars. The momentum of the Eagle Kingdom is very majestic, but the strength of naval warfare is not worthy of their momentum. If this goes on before they rush ashore, they will probably die in this sea area. But it shouldn't be so simple. The Eagle Kingdom won't invade so rashly. It's a mage. A Chi who was also holding a telescope suddenly said. Oh? William Lee and List gasped in surprise. A Chi put down her binoculars and pointed to the sea ahead. I feel magic gathering. There are many magicians hiding on the ships of the Eagle Kingdom. There was no need for a Chi to remind him further. The second wave of the boarding battle quickly unfolded. At this time, everyone realized that the invaders of the Eagle Kingdom not only included the knight, but also a large number of mages. In a split second, countless spells appeared on the surface of the sea. There were huge water pillars erupting, meteorites shooting from the sky, countless icicles shuttling back and forth, lightning cutting through the waves, and a cloud of black fog swallowing everything in its path. Water, fire, earth, wind, lightning, ice, darkness, 8 different types of spells were released together. The fast-sailing ships of the Sapphire family were quickly submerged by the spells. However, there were also a group of mages on the fast-sailing ships of the Sapphire family. While the ships were maneuvering to avoid the spells, these mages were also counterattacking, especially the ships of the Blue Blood Alliance. Almost every fast-sailing ship had a few mages releasing magic to counterattack. I thought that since the Magic Goat family, the Sapphire family would no longer vigorously cultivate mages. Moreover, there was the Goat Gathering and the Bull Marquis Dragon slaying incident. List was a little puzzled. It's true that sorcerers are on the decline, but no matter what, our battles and our lives are inseparable from sorcerers. The Grand Duke will not be prejudiced against sorcerers just because of 1 or 2 incidents involving sorcerers, Lee Williams said. He then turned to a Chi and said, our fleet will be entering the battle zone. A Chi, protect the fleet. He was giving the order as an elder. However, a Chi didn't answer him. She just looked at List. When List nodded, she replied, a Chi will protect the fleet. As a sea demon high mage, a Chi didn't have much passion for humans, perhaps because of her racial identity, or perhaps because of List's teachings. Even if the other party was List's father, she just treated him with a normal heart. This made William Lee feel a faint sorrow in his heart, but he quickly covered it up with a dry cough. You guys continue to watch the battle. As the Grand Duke's follower, I will personally participate in this naval battle. This is the duty of a follower, I will not choose to escape from it. After saying that, he strode away from the bow of the ship, ready to command the family's fleet to fight. He didn't panic in the slightest. He fully displayed the noble qualities of a knight, establishing the lofty image of a father, a lord, and an elder. After all, there was a dragon knight and a magic high mage standing behind him. What was there to fear? Magic rose. She gushed out. The naval battle quickly became white-hot. Countless ships sank on the surface of the sea. List's own orders of chivalry and fleet had not yet arrived at Iron Hoof Island. Half of the orders of chivalry from Coral Island had also not arrived. According to the normal way of sending messages and providing support, it would take 7 days to go back and forth from Coral Island. Only 3 days had passed. Therefore, he only followed half of the family's fleet stationed at Oxtail Marquisdom. There was no need for his knight to be consumed in the naval battle. Even he himself did not take action. Instead, Oxtail Marquis performed bravely. He repeatedly flew and seized ships, defeating several sailboats with his own strength. Every time he was in danger, there would always be a flame arrow to rescue him, or a waterspout to block a killer move for him. This made him even more unscrupulous, killing in all directions to his heart's content. At this time, as the ships on the sea continued to release surging chi, the magic drifting around the battlefield was no longer stable. The magic began to weaken, turning into sky knights flying all over the sky. These sky knights that could fly were undoubtedly the main force of the boarding battle. Marquis Chi is about to reach perfection. I didn't expect that just a few days after I gave him the manuscript of the sky, he has already honed his high-level chi to perfection. List released magic eyes to track Lee Williams' figure. Naturally, he could see that the other party's chi was gradually solidifying. This was a sign of high-level chi perfection. But it's normal. Marquis has been known as a saint of the sword for more than 10 years. His chi should have been honed to a certain extent. With the help of the manuscript of the sky, he pierced through the window paper. He was watching Lee Williams' battle. Achi reminded, "Brother, there is a sky knight over there. He looks very powerful. He can float in the air. Is he the domain knight that brother described?" List picked up the binoculars and looked in the direction of Achi's finger. He saw a familiar knight rushing towards a sapphire sailboat. His flying method was completely different from the ordinary sky knight. The ordinary sky knight was more like jumping, diving and gliding, but he was really flying. The kind of flying that Sun Wukong stepped on the somersault cloud. Magic eyes could see that there was a cloud of chi under his feet. Chapter 708. Send the order. Tulip fleet sail to the right. When the Marquis wanted to kill monsters personally to level up, List was the Tulip's highest commander. He immediately ordered the fleet to change direction. "I want to catch up with D. Maria Rainflower Stone." The fleet quickly turned and sailed toward Marquis Wildwave's fleet. With List and Achi's protection, the Tulip fleet had not sunk yet. It was still full. Especially during boarding battles, Achi would always release a few spells to easily destroy the opponent's ships. The sea was her territory. If she wanted someone to behave, that person would behave. Dozens of Tulip ships kept advancing, rushing toward Marquis Wildwave, who was savagely destroying ships. The distance kept shrinking, and there was no need to use binoculars to observe. At this time, the Oxtail Marquis also realized that his fleet had changed direction, returning directly to the Tulip's deck. "List, what's going on? Why did they change their route?" "Father, look over there." Lee William looked up and immediately saw Marquis Wildwave. "This is D. Maria Rainflower Stone, that domain knight." "Yes, it's him." List single-handedly gripped the hilt of the Ice Soul Dragon slaying sword, his expression slightly excited. As a powerful domain knight, he not only has a battle energy domain manual, but also a family battle energy secret technique. "As long as I capture him, all of this is mine." The Marquis asked, "Can you capture him without exposing the dragon?" List looked up at the sky. "Father, you know too little about the Dragon Knight. With his current strength, his strong body, his surging dragon battle energy, and the ability to use the fire dragon Leo in his body to release dragon will, his combat power was limitless. It was not something an ordinary knight could imagine." "Then I'll go lure D. Maria." The Marquis was eager. He had never fought a domain knight before. "Doesn't matter." "All right." When the two fleets neared, they could see Marquis Wildwave's expression. The Oxtail Marquis suddenly rose and flew toward the imposing Marquis Wildwave. The distance between them was closing. Naturally, Marquis Nu Tao also saw Marquis Oxtail. He recognized him. It was this man's son who had made him the laughing stock of the Eagle Kingdom. A dignified domain knight, a Marquis ranked highly in the kingdom, was defeated by a youth from the Kingdom of Flies. It was a great humiliation. He looked around, but he didn't see List anywhere. Marquis Nu Tao revealed a cold smile and flew towards Marquis Oxtail. This time, he would be able to call the wind and summon the rain in Sapphire and wipe away his previous humiliation. The Oxtail Marquis was also full of confidence. Thus, a moment later, the two of them suddenly collided. Both of them were water-attributed Do Chi. It was as if two huge waves had collided and raindrops filled the sky. Subsequently, a blood-curdling scream seemed to be heard. The Oxtail Marquis fell down faster than it could attack. "Achi, save the Marquis," List ordered. Then he gathered his fire-attributed dragon battle chi and shot towards the Marquis like an arrow. Marquis Nu Tao, who had defeated the Oxtail Marquis in one move, was about to pursue and capture Lee William when he suddenly saw a ball of flame rushing towards him from the corner of his eye. This ball of flame quickly overlapped with the figure in his memory, evoking the anger that had been engraved in his mind but had nowhere to vent. "It's him." List. "The ancient warrior inheritor. Back then you relied on a sneak attack to win by a fluke. Now you want to use the same trick again. Do you really think that I, the Raging Wave Sword Sage, have an undeserved reputation?" Marquis Nu Tao clenched an ordinary big sword and stared at the azure big sword in the hand of the flaming figure. "And my Ice Soul Dragon slaying sword. Give it back to me." In an instant, many thoughts flashed through his mind. Marquis Nu Tao gathered all his Do Chi and prepared to face the attack head-on to prove his strength. However, the flaming figure in his field of vision was rapidly dimming. Then, the flame was extinguished and a ball of cold air condensed around it. Boom! The violent Do Chi and the cold air collided. However, the expected earth-shattering collision did not occur. Instead, List casually waved the Ice Soul Dragon slaying sword. Countless ice attribute Do Chi was released in a special way. When these ice attribute Do Chi touched the Do Chi field, it quickly froze and divided the mixed Do Chi. In the vision of the magic eye, Marquis Nu Tao's surging Do Chi field quickly collapsed at a speed visible to the naked eye. Clang. The ordinary-looking broadsword and the Ice Soul Dragon slaying sword clashed, rippling out an even more bone-chilling cold air. The ripples spread out like ripples, sweeping through even more Do Chi domains. How could this be? Marquis Nu Tao felt that something was wrong. His power was declining like a tide. And most importantly, List in front of him was not repelled by his power. Instead, he displayed an even more surging power and floated in the air to fight with him. This made him turn pale with fright. How can you also float in the air? Without the Do Chi field you can't fly at all. You can only jump. Guess. List smiled. He did not immediately switch back to fire attribute Do Chi. Instead, he continued to use the Ice Soul Dragon slaying sword's ice spin and freeze skills to contend with Marquis Nu Tao. He did not want to immediately defeat Marquis Nu Tao and expose too much strength. Moreover, he could take this opportunity to familiarize himself with the Ice Soul Dragon slaying sword's Ice Seal skill. Impossible. Why is my Do Chi field collapsing? Because I have the Ice Soul Dragon slaying sword, which has the effect of freeze Do Chi field. This, the big elf soldier, has its own attribute. With your brain you can't crack it at all. Naturally you don't have the freeze skill. List said calmly. The battle in the sky was like a stroll for him. Chatting while fighting did not hinder his performance at all. Countless ice attribute Do Chi overflowed, constantly destroying the Do Chi field. In just a few words, Marquis Nu Tao's Do Chi field was about to collapse. Although he felt humiliated, he began to think about retreating. List. If not for the Ice Soul Dragon slaying sword, you can't possibly fight me head-on. I'll let you be arrogant for a while. Not long after, when the Grand Duchy of Sapphire is destroyed, I'll let you have a good taste of the food in the Great River Heart Castle prison. Having said that, he suddenly activated the remaining Do Chi field, pulled himself outwards and flew away at top speed. His gaze froze. List quickly gave up on the ice spin skill and once again activated the fire attribute Dragon Do Chi. He chased after the fleeing Marquis Nu Tao like a rocket. You're a guest from afar, Marquis de Maria. Why don't you have a taste of the food in the Thorn Castle first? The taste will definitely make you forget to return. Get lost. Marquis Nu Tao waved his sword and slashed. It was as if he had slashed out a ray of light in a huge wave. List waved the Ice Soul Dragon slaying sword with one hand. Flames bloomed, directly smashing all the light in the huge wave, and then slashed at Marquis Nu Tao's back. Marquis Nu Tao instantly spat out blood and his body fell rapidly. But he was not faster than List's speed. He directly grabbed his armor, and the Ice Soul Dragon slaying sword wrapped around his neck. Hot flames curled around him, forcing Marquis Nu Tao, whose internal organs were injured, to not dare to move. Just like that, he was carried by List towards the tulip. His followers could only watch as their lord was captured. The battle was complicated to describe. In fact, it only took a moment to determine the victor. With Marquis Nu Tao captured, the battle quickly came to an end. The Dragon Knight took action and it was a piece of cake. If it was not for the sake of putting on an act, he would have captured Marquis Nu Tao in just one move. The difference in strength was too great. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.